On a misty morning in the heart of Africa, the first light of dawn spills over an endless tapestry of green hills. A gentle fog clings to the valleys, slowly unveiling terraced slopes and villages stirring to life. In the distance, the cone of an ancient volcano pierces the clouds, its silhouette standing guard over the land. This is Rwanda, a small country with a grand nickname, the land of 1,000 hills. Rwanda's landscapes are breathtaking and diverse. In the west, mountains draped in cloud forest climb skyward, part of a chain of volcanoes that once rumbled with the birth of the Great Rift Valley. In the east, flat-topped acacia trees dot golden savannas where antelope graze and zebra roam. Scattered across the country are lakes shimmering like mirrors. From the great expanse of Lake Kivu on the western border to smaller lakes nestled quietly among the hills. Everywhere you look, rolling highlands unfold, one after another, giving Rwanda its poetic moniker. Though small in size, roughly 26,000 square kilometers, Rwanda is home to over 13 million people. This makes it one of the most densely populated countries in Africa, a vibrant tapestry of communities spread across hills and valleys. Yet, beneath the tranquil beauty of Rwanda's scenery lies the rich story of a nation that has known both unimaginable hardship and inspiring resilience. Over the course of this deep dive, we will journey through Rwanda's geography, climate, economy, and history. We'll explore its politics and the path of recovery that has shaped its modern identity. We will meet the cultures and communities that give Rwanda its soul, from the bustling streets of Kigali to remote rural villages humming with tradition. We will savor the country's food, cheer at its sports, and witness how education, healthcare, and grassroots innovation are transforming lives. Through vivid scenes and narratives, Rwanda Explained will uncover how this country's past informs its present, and how its people are building a future defined by hope and progress. We begin our journey with the land itself, the physical canvas on which Rwanda's story is written. Rwanda sits just south of the equator in the Great Lakes region of East Africa, bordered by Uganda to the north, Tanzania to the east, Burundi to the south, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo to the west. Though landlocked, it is a water-rich country. The entire territory lies at high elevation. Even the lowest point, the Rusizi River in the southwest, is about 950 meters above sea level. From north to south, a high mountain range runs through Rwanda, forming a continental divide between two of Africa's great watersheds. About 80% of the country's land area drains eastward into the Nile Basin, while the remaining 20% drains westward into the Congo Basin via the Rusizi. Rain that falls on the western slopes will eventually flow into the Congo River and Atlantic Ocean, whereas rainfall in the east winds up in the Nile and Mediterranean, a remarkable fact for such a small country. One of the Nile's furthest headwaters originates in Rwanda's lush Nyungwe Forest, where trickling streams join to form the Nyabarongo River, which in turn becomes the Akagera River, meandering toward Lake Victoria. Water is a defining feature of Rwanda's geography. The country's largest lake, Lake Kivu, fills the floor of the Albertine Rift along the western border. Steep forested hills encircle Kivu's blue-green waters, which plunge to a depth of 480 meters, making it one of the world's deepest lakes. Fishermen in dugout canoes cast their nets on Kivu at dusk, as the sun sinks behind the neighboring Congolese mountains. Lake Kivu also holds an unusual secret. Its deep waters are saturated with methane gas produced by volcanic processes beneath the lakebed. In a pioneering project, Rwanda has begun extracting this methane to generate electricity, turning a potential natural hazard into a valuable resource for the nation. Elsewhere, a constellation of smaller lakes is tucked among Rwanda's hills. In the north, twin lakes Burera and Ruhondo reflect the silhouettes of volcanoes. In the east, lakes like Ruweru and Ihima shine amid the savanna plains of Akagera, attracting hippos, crocodiles, and waterbirds. These lakes and rivers not only sustain biodiversity and agriculture, but also add to the country's scenic splendor. Beyond water, it is Rwanda's dramatic topography that leaves an indelible impression. Mountains and hills are everywhere. The northwestern skyline is dominated by the Virunga volcanoes, a chain of towering cones draped in emerald forests. Here stands Mount Karisimbi, Rwanda's highest peak at 4,507 meters, often capped with clouds and mist. Alongside it are other volcanic giants, Bisoke, Muhabura, Gahinga, Sabinyo. Their slopes cloaked in bamboo and montane forests. Volcanic soil from these mountains has over millennia fertilized the land, contributing to Rwanda's famed agricultural terraces that etch the hillsides in intricate patterns. Moving south and east from the Virunga range, the land transitions into a high central plateau. Ridges and valleys ripple across the country in a seemingly endless succession. The Thousand Hills, from which Rwanda gets its nickname. Standing on a ridge in central Rwanda, one can turn in a circle and see hill after hill rolling to the horizon, each separated by narrow valleys where rivers or streams flow. Farms and villages checker these slopes. Banana groves and bean fields climb steep inclines, showing the resourcefulness of Rwandan farmers who have contoured the land into terraces to prevent erosion and make use of every arable patch. This heartland plateau gradually lowers toward the east, where the terrain opens into flatter savannas and marshes along the border with Tanzania. Despite its small size, Rwanda boasts an extraordinary range of ecosystems and an abundance of life. The country's location in the Albertine Rift, a branch of the Great Rift Valley renowned for its ecological richness, endows it with flora and fauna well out of proportion to its area. In fact, this little nation harbors roughly 40% of all mammal species found on the African continent, an almost unbelievable statistic. Wildlife thrives in Rwanda's national parks, forests, and wetlands, which together cover about 10% of the national territory. These protected areas safeguard habitats from high montane forests to savanna grasslands, and they are the stage for some of the most iconic animals on Earth. Foremost among Rwanda's natural treasures are its mountain gorillas. In the misty heights of Volcanoes National Park, hidden among bamboo thickets and hagenia trees, live families of these gentle giants. Creatures so rare they exist only in this small corner of the world where Rwanda meets Uganda and the DRC. Rwanda has become synonymous with gorilla conservation. Thanks to decades of protection and community-focused tourism, the population of mountain gorillas has rebounded from the brink. Today, over 1,000 mountain gorillas roam the Virunga Massif and the Bwindi area, with a significant portion of those in Rwanda. Trekking to see them in Volcanoes National Park is an awe-inspiring experience. As dawn breaks, trackers lead visitors through tangled vegetation, hearts pounding with anticipation, until, suddenly, they are gazing into the eyes of a massive silverback peacefully munching wild celery. Sharing the park's cool forests are other endangered primates like the golden monkey, plus endemic birds and orchids found nowhere else. Far to the south, Rwanda shelters another biological gem, Nyungwe Forest, one of Central Africa's largest remaining montane rainforests. This ancient forest, so old that some trees have stood for hundreds of years, is a living relic of the biodiversity that once covered much of the region. Nyungwe's dense canopy is alive with wildlife. Troops of chimpanzees crash through the fig trees and hoot across ravines. Acrobatic colobus monkeys, in black and white mantles, leap from branch to branch in groups dozens strong. Over 300 bird species have been recorded here, including the great blue turaco with its electric blue plumage. Walking along the forest floor feels like entering a green cathedral, with sunlight filtering through layers of leaves and the air thick with the scent of humus and flowers. A suspended canopy walkway allows the rare chance to stroll through the treetops, catching glimpses of butterflies and monkeys at eye level. Nyungwe's rich biodiversity and pristine watershed make it invaluable. It is the source of rivers that feed both Lake Kivu and the Nile, and a critical refuge for countless species. Shifting from forest to savanna, Rwanda's eastern frontier is home to Akagera National Park, a conservation success story. Akagera encompasses a mosaic of rolling grasslands, acacia woodlands, swamps, and lakes, a classic East African landscape on a smaller scale. In the 1990s, Akagera's wildlife was devastated by conflict and poaching. But in recent years, the park has been revived under a joint effort by the Rwandan government and conservation groups. Elephants now lumber through the woodlands again, and some 8,000 impala graze the plains alongside zebras and giraffes. The park's lakes teem with hippos blowing water spray at dusk, while crocodiles bask on muddy banks. Most remarkably, lions, absent from Rwanda for nearly 15 years, were reintroduced to Akagera in 2015 and have since multiplied, re-establishing their place at the top of the food chain. And in 2017, Akagera welcomed back the eastern black rhinoceros after decades of local extinction, restoring Rwanda's roster of iconic megafauna. Today, visitors on safari can hope to sight all of Africa's big five: lion, leopard, elephant, rhino, and buffalo, within Akagera's boundaries. The resurgence of this park has not only brought back ecological balance but also provided sustainable tourism income and pride to surrounding communities. Rwanda's newest park, Gishwati Mukura, is a testament to the country's commitment to rewilding and conservation. Once degraded by deforestation, the Gishwati and Mukura forests in the northwest have been designated as a combined national park to rehabilitate the land. Already, chimpanzees, golden monkeys, and myriad bird species that survive in these forest fragments are benefiting from reforestation efforts. Over time, the goal is to knit these habitats back into a healthy corridor for wildlife. From the volcanic Virunga heights down to the wetlands of the east, Rwanda's natural beauty is both scenic and deeply symbolic. It speaks to resilience and renewal. Not long ago, some of these hills and parks were silent and empty of wildlife. Today, they are alive again. The environment is woven into Rwanda's national identity. It's seen in initiatives like the ban on plastic bags to keep the countryside pristine, and in the annual Kwita ceremony where communities gather to name newborn baby gorillas, celebrating conservation as part of our cultural heritage. As we watch the afternoon light gild the thousand hills and hear the chorus of crickets and birds, we feel the intimate connection Rwandans have with their land. In Rwanda, nature and people are profoundly intertwined. The land has shaped the culture, in traditional songs and dances that mimic the swooping hills, in proverbs about rain and harvest, and in turn, the people are reshaping the land in sustainable ways, determined to protect its bounties for future generations. With the stage set by Rwanda's geography and wildlife, we can now understand better the context for all that follows. In the cool highland air under equatorial skies, Rwanda's climate is the next part of the story, revealing how this nation can be green and lush one moment and sun-baked the next, yet always welcoming in its gentle balance. Perched at a high elevation in the tropics, Rwanda enjoys a moderate, pleasant climate that often surprises visitors. Despite lying just 2 degrees south of the equator, the country's altitude tempers the heat. In the capital city of Kigali, at roughly 1,500 meters elevation, daytime temperatures typically range from a comfortable 23 to 27 degrees Celsius, 73 to 81 degrees Fahrenheit, and drop to around 12 to 16 degrees Celsius, 54 to 61 degrees Fahrenheit, at night. There is little seasonal variation in these temperatures. Rwanda is sometimes called the land of eternal spring. Higher altitude areas in the north and west are cooler, with misty mountain mornings that can feel almost brisk, while the lower eastern plains are warmer and drier on average. The rhythm of Rwandan life is closely tied to the cycle of rainy and dry seasons. The country experiences 2 distinct rainy seasons each year: a longer season from about February to May, when soaking rains feed the planting season, and a shorter rainy period from September to December. In between come the dry seasons, a main dry spell from June through August, when sunshine is abundant and rain is scarce, and a shorter dry interval in late December to January. During the wet months, afternoon thunderstorms frequently roll over the hills, draping the landscape in curtains of rain. Roads become muddy, and farmers rejoice as their crops of maize, beans, and sorghum get the water they need. In the dry seasons, the red earth hardens, and a rustling golden tint covers the hills as grasses dry. But even then, morning fog and dew in the highlands lend a touch of moisture. Rainfall is not uniform across Rwanda. The western and northwestern regions, home to the volcanic mountains and high forests, receive the most rainfall, often well over 1,200 millimeters, around 50 inches, per year. The hills of Nyungwe and the slopes of the Virungas are among the wettest areas, keeping their forests lush and streams flowing year-round. By contrast, the eastern plains and the area around Akagera are markedly drier, with some locations getting as little as 800 millimeters, 30 inches, of rain annually. Here, the landscape opens up into dry savanna grassland and scrub, and seasonal wetlands shrink under the hot sun. These regional contrasts mean that at any given time, while drizzle might be veiling the rainforests of the west, the east could be basking under clear blue skies. Overall, Rwanda's climate is well suited to agriculture and human comfort. It is rarely too hot or too cold. Gardens stay green year-round on the misty hillsides. The air is fresh, and at higher elevations one might even light a fire at night for a bit of warmth. This gentle climate, however, can swing to extremes on occasion. In some years, the rains arrive late or fall too heavily. Extended heavy downpours have been known to cause floods and landslides in the mountainous areas, as saturated soils give way on steep slopes. Conversely, if the rains falter, parts of the eastern region can experience drought, wilting crops and pastures. Rwandans have learned to read the clouds and adapt, planting in harmony with the seasons and using terracing and other techniques to conserve precious rainwater. In recent times, climate change has become an increasing concern, even in this temperate land. Scientific projections suggest that average temperatures in Rwanda could rise significantly by the end of the century, by up to 1.5 to 2.5 degrees Celsius by 2050, and potentially 3 to 4 degrees Celsius by 2100, compared to historical averages. Such warming may disrupt Rwanda's reliable growing seasons with more erratic rainfall patterns. Indeed, farmers have reported shifting rain onset and more frequent intense storms. The government has responded proactively, from promoting agroforestry, planting trees alongside crops to shield against erosion and dry winds, to restoring wetlands that can buffer floodwaters. Rwanda's nationally celebrated monthly community service day, Umuganda, often includes tree planting and soil conservation projects that help communities prepare for a changing climate. Ambitious reforestation drives have lifted forest cover, and the country is investing in early warning systems for weather hazards. For now, Rwanda's climate remains one of its quiet joys. Gentle breezes across the hills, cool nights listening to rain patter on a metal roof, and warm, sunny afternoons perfect for tending fields or drying coffee beans. The natural rhythms of rainy and dry seasons continue to guide rural life, as they have for centuries. These rhythms also set the stage for Rwanda's economic activities and way of life. With an understanding of the land and climate in mind, we turn next to the economy, to see how Rwandans earn their livelihood from these verdant hills and valleys. At sunrise in a Rwandan valley, farmers in colorful wraps till the dark soil, tending crops as they have for generations. Meanwhile, in the capital city, Kigali, young entrepreneurs in a technology hub are coding software solutions for tomorrow. These twin images, the traditional farmer and the modern innovator, capture the heart of Rwanda's economy today, which is transforming rapidly while still rooted in the land. Agriculture has long been the backbone of Rwanda's economy. Even now, roughly 2/3 of Rwandans work in farming, most of them smallholders who cultivate tiny plots on the country's ubiquitous hillsides. They grow staples like bananas, sweet potatoes, maize, cassava, and beans to feed their families, often intercropping on terraces that curve along the slopes. In the early morning, hillsides come alive with activity as men and women hoe the earth and children chase goats or carry jerry cans of water. The rhythm of planting and harvest shapes rural life. Yet Rwandan agriculture is not only subsistence, it also produces high-value crops that connect this rural nation to global markets. The steep highland slopes and volcanic soils are ideal for coffee and tea, Rwanda's most famous exports. Rwandan Arabica coffee beans, often grown by small cooperatives, have earned a reputation for excellence on the international specialty coffee market, winning awards for their quality and flavor. Similarly, the country's fragrant tea, grown on misty plantations like those around Nyungwe, is sought after for blending in Britain and beyond. Other export crops include pyrethrum, a natural insecticide made from chrysanthemum flowers grown in the highlands, and emerging products like avocados and chili peppers. Reliance on agricultural exports makes Rwanda vulnerable to shifts in their prices. A drought or a drop in coffee demand can hurt farmers' incomes. So farmers and the government have been working to diversify what Rwanda grows. Decades of effort have gone into modernizing agriculture. Terraces have been constructed to prevent soil erosion on steep hills. Marshlands have been drained and irrigated for rice paddies, and improved seed varieties and fertilizers are gradually being adopted. One can see evidence of this on a drive through the countryside. Hillside after hillside meticulously terraced and green, a patchwork of small fields producing surprisingly large harvests from such a tiny nation. Cows, a traditional measure of wealth, are now part of an anti-poverty program called Virunga, 1 cow per poor family, which has distributed hundreds of thousands of cows to rural households to boost nutrition and income. In village after village, milk collection centers dot the roadways, and dairy cooperatives turn milk into cheese and yogurt for local sale. Slowly but surely, subsistence farmers are integrating into the cash economy, sending milk, beans, or bananas to markets in Kigali. While agriculture employs the majority of citizens, it contributes only about a quarter of Rwanda's GDP. Over the past 2 decades, Rwanda's economy has been rebalancing. The services sector, including trade, transportation, banking, tourism, and information technology, now generates the largest share of national income. In Kigali, this shift is visible in the skyline. Modern office buildings, banks, hotels, and conference centers signal a country looking to become a regional business hub. Rwanda consistently ranks as one of Africa's top countries for ease of doing business. Streamlined regulations allow a new business to be registered online in a matter of hours. Foreign investors are welcomed with tax incentives, and special economic zones have been established on the city's outskirts to host manufacturing and logistics companies. One of Rwanda's big success stories is tourism, a service industry that now stands as the country's top foreign exchange earner. Tourists from around the world fly into Kigali via the growing national carrier Rwandair, lured by Rwanda's unique attractions. Chief among them is the chance to go gorilla trekking in Volcanoes National Park, a bucket list adventure that, while costly, offers the unforgettable experience of an hour in the presence of wild mountain gorillas. This carefully managed form of ecotourism brings in tens of millions of dollars each year, part of which is plowed back into communities around the park for schools and clinics. Beyond gorillas, Rwanda has developed new draws. Akagera's safari experience has been revived. Nyungwe's forest canopy walk appeals to nature lovers, and Lake Kivu's serene resorts provide relaxation. In Kigali, a gleaming convention center that lights up the night sky with its colorful dome has become a symbol of Rwanda's ambition to be Africa's conference capital. International meetings, from African Union summits to global technology forums, are held in Kigali, filling hotels and showcasing the country's safety and hospitality. In 2018, Rwanda even became an official sponsor of the Arsenal Football Club, with Visit Rwanda emblazoned on players' sleeves, as an innovative marketing push to put the country on the global tourism map. Another pillar of the new economy is mining, though its footprint is less visible to the casual observer. Under the forests and hills lie deposits of valuable minerals like tin, tungsten, and tantalum, often referred to as the 3 Ts. These are critical in manufacturing electronics, and Rwanda has become a significant exporter of these minerals. In rural western Rwanda, small-scale mining operations sift through soil and rock to extract cassiterite, tin ore, and coltan, which contains tantalum, often by hand or with simple machines. It is demanding work, but it provides livelihoods in areas where farming alone might not suffice. The government has been encouraging more mechanization and formalization of the mining sector to increase its yields and safety. From humble mines in Rwanda, these minerals eventually find their way into smartphones, jet engines, and other high-tech products around the world. Rwanda also has quarries for construction materials and a nascent petroleum exploration effort at Lake Kivu, where methane gas is already being harvested for energy, as noted earlier. Overall, mining accounts for a smaller slice of GDP, but a substantial portion of export earnings, making it a key part of Rwanda's trade strategy. Underpinning all these sectors is a determined strategy for growth known as Vision 2020, and now Vision 2050, which the Rwandan government has been doggedly implementing. After the devastation of 1994, the economy was in ruins. Infrastructure destroyed, human capital decimated, investors scared away. But in the years since, Rwanda has achieved one of Africa's most remarkable economic turnarounds. From the early 2000s onward, annual GDP growth regularly averaged around 7 to 8%, earning Rwanda comparisons to the Asian tigers for its fast development. Per capita GDP, in purchasing power terms, climbed from only about $416 in 1994 to over $2,200 by 2018. Still modest, but a dramatic improvement in living standards. Massive gains have been made in stabilizing the economy, reducing poverty, and building infrastructure, which we will explore later. And poverty rates have fallen sharply, from 60% in 2000 to around 38% by 2017. The country remains relatively low income, but the trajectory is strongly upward. The Rwandan government aspires for the nation to reach middle-income status by 2035 and high income by 2050. To get there, it is betting big on technology, innovation, and value-added industries. Kigali's streets now bustle not only with traders and taxi drivers, but also with software developers, financial analysts, and university graduates in new sectors. A burgeoning ICT sector is evident in initiatives like tech incubators and the Kigali Innovation City project, a planned campus of universities and tech firms aiming to be the Silicon Valley of East Africa. Global companies have set up regional offices in Kigali's tidy business district, attracted by Rwanda's stability and zero tolerance for corruption. In a striking example of leapfrogging, Rwanda in 2016 became one of the first countries in the world to use drones for public health. Autonomous red and white drones now zip through the mountain skies delivering blood and medical supplies to remote clinics, cutting delivery times from hours to minutes. The country has also launched smartphone assembly plants, producing Made in Rwanda Android phones for the local market, and is investing in skills training for its youthful population. The average Rwandan is just 20 years old. A partnership with Carnegie Mellon University established an African campus in Kigali, where students from across the continent earn world-class degrees in engineering and IT without leaving Africa. Even as Rwanda embraces the cutting edge, it has not lost sight of basics needed for economic growth. Roads have been paved across the country, connecting every district capital. You can now drive from Kigali to any provincial town on smooth tarmac. A new international airport is under construction east of Kigali to boost connectivity. The national airline, Rwandair, has expanded routes to Europe, Asia, and across Africa, punching above its weight to make Kigali a transit hub. Electricity has been extended to the majority of the population, up from practically none in rural areas 25 years ago. Powered by a mix of hydroelectric dams, methane gas from Lake Kivu, and solar farms that gleam under the equatorial sun. In off-grid villages, innovative solar home systems and microgrids are bringing light to homes for the first time. This robust economic growth has been buttressed by political stability and sound management. Rwanda aggressively courts investors and development partners, branding itself as a place where things work in Africa. International aid, which once accounted for the bulk of the government budget, is slowly decreasing as private sector revenue rises. But donor-funded projects remain visible, from rural health centers built with global grants to foreign-funded vocational schools training the next generation of Rwandan workers. The country has learned to leverage aid for long-term gain, often insisting on projects that build local capacity rather than foster dependency. Challenges, of course, persist. Rwanda's small domestic market and landlocked position mean it must trade effectively with neighbors and the wider world to grow. The government is pushing industrialization, like processing its own coffee and tea rather than exporting raw crops. But building a manufacturing base from scratch is not easy. Job creation struggles to keep pace with the thousands of youths entering the workforce each year. And the specter of inequality looms as urban educated elites prosper far more than remote rural families. The authorities acknowledge these hurdles even as they trumpet successes. Plans are underway to further improve infrastructure, invest in education and high-tech industries, and continue the painstaking work of lifting the poorest citizens into the middle class. In a nutshell, Rwanda's economy today is a study in contrasts and progress. A clay brick house in a village where a farmer checks market prices on a Chinese-made smartphone. A Kigali coffee cafe serving locally roasted beans to young professionals. A roadside stall selling prepaid mobile data alongside avocados and onions. The country is straddling the agrarian and the digital, determined to harness both. As we move on, we will see how Rwanda's history influenced its current political and economic choices. Next, we delve into the history of Rwanda, a sweeping journey from ancient kingdoms through colonial rule to the devastating genocide and the extraordinary recovery that followed, which set the stage for the nation's rebirth. Ancient kingdoms. The story of Rwanda begins long before colonial maps and modern borders. For centuries, this land of hills was home to a centralized kingdom ruled by a mwami, king, and a pastoral aristocracy. According to oral tradition, the Kingdom of Rwanda was founded by Gihanga in the 11th century, and over subsequent generations it grew in power. By the 1800s, the kingdom had solidified under a Tutsi monarchy, reaching its zenith under King Kigali, the fourth Rwabugiri, ruled circa 1853 to 1895. Rwabugiri is remembered as a great warrior king who expanded and unified the realm. By 1900, Rwanda was a well-defined state with a centralized military and administrative structure. In the traditional social system, the population was culturally homogeneous. All spoke Kinyarwanda and shared the same religion and clan lineages, yet stratified. The majority were Hutu, mostly farmers, a minority were Tutsi, mostly cattle herders, and a very small group, the Twa, pygmy forest dwellers, were also part of society. These categories were not rigid castes initially. There was intermarriage and some social mobility. A poor Tutsi could become labeled Hutu and vice versa based on wealth or patronage. The Mwami, always Tutsi, governed through chiefs of both Tutsi and Hutu backgrounds. Cattle, land, and clientship ties bound communities together under the king's authority. Colonial rule. Rwanda encountered Europeans in the late 19th century when German explorers arrived in the Great Lakes region. In 1890, Rwanda was claimed by Germany as part of German East Africa, though direct colonial presence was minimal. German administrators ruled through the existing monarchy, finding it convenient to use the Mwami's hierarchy to collect taxes and enforce order. After World War I, under the Treaty of Versailles, Germany lost its colonies and Rwanda, with neighboring Burundi, was assigned to Belgium as a League of Nations mandate. Thus, beginning in 1916 and formalized in 1919, Rwanda came under Belgian rule. The Belgians maintained the indirect governance model, but began reshaping Rwandan society in profound ways. Influenced by then-popular European notions of racial hierarchy, Belgian officials cemented the divisions between Hutu and Tutsi. In the 1920s, they introduced identity cards listing each person's ethnicity, effectively freezing social mobility. Tutsis, especially those in the aristocracy, were favored for administrative positions, education, and opportunities, while Hutus were largely relegated to hard labor. The colonial ideology portrayed Tutsis as natural rulers, taller, more Hamitic, falsely claimed to have Caucasian lineage, and Hutus as an inferior peasant class. This narrative sowed seeds of ethnic resentment that had not previously defined Rwandan life so starkly. Under Belgian control, the exploitation and inequality sharpened. Tutsi chiefs were often pressured by Belgian authorities to extract heavy taxes and crop quotas from Hutu villagers, which bred anger at both the colonial regime and the Tutsi elite. Christian missionaries arrived and converted much of the population to Catholicism. But even in mission schools, Tutsi children were given preference. By the mid-20th century, a Hutu counter-elite was emerging, educated Hutu clerks and priests who increasingly protested their exclusion. The social fabric was fraying. One Belgian administrator lamented that the premise of inequality had become all-pervasive. In 1957, a group of Hutu intellectuals issued the Bahutu Manifesto, explicitly calling for majority rule and an end to Tutsi dominance. The road to independence. tensions came to a head as Rwanda approached independence. In 1959, the simmering resentments exploded into what is often called the Rwandan Revolution. That year, the aging Tutsi king Mutara III died suddenly, some say by poisoning, and a volatile power struggle ensued. Sparking the conflict was a violent incident between some Tutsi and Hutu subordinates, which escalated into a broad Hutu peasant uprising against Tutsi chiefs. Hutu activists, some armed with machetes and torches, attacked the homes of local Tutsis, killing hundreds and sending shockwaves through the country. The Belgian authorities, sensing the shifting winds, chose not to suppress the revolt. In fact, they began leaning in favor of the Hutu majority's demands. Over the next months and into 1960, reprisal attacks by both sides took hundreds of lives. Tutsi homes were burned, and many families fled in fear to neighboring countries. This social revolution led to the downfall of the Tutsi monarchy. In 1961, a coalition of Hutu leaders declared Rwanda a republic, effectively deposing the last king, Kigali V, who fled into exile. When Belgium organized a referendum shortly after, the Rwandan populace overwhelmingly voted to abolish the monarchy. On July 1, 1962, Rwanda officially gained independence as a republic under Hutu leadership. The first president of independent Rwanda was Gregoire Kayibanda, a Hutu from the south who had been a key author of the Bahutu Manifesto. His party, Parmehutu, took power, promising to empower the Hutu majority. In the aftermath of the revolution, an estimated 120,000 to 150,000 Tutsis, roughly half of the pre-independence Tutsi population, had fled Rwanda in fear, taking refuge in Uganda, Burundi, Congo, and Tanzania. These exiles formed a Tutsi diaspora that longed to return but were unwelcome by the new regime. Kayibanda's government entrenched Hutu dominance in all sectors. Periodically in the 1960s, small bands of exiled Tutsis, called inyenzi, or cockroaches by the government, launched guerrilla raids into Rwanda, seeking to reclaim their homeland. But these were crushed, often followed by local reprisals against Tutsi civilians who remained inside Rwanda. One such raid in late 1963 triggered a particularly brutal backlash, with the young Hutu government ordering tens of thousands of Tutsi killed in the southern province, effectively eliminating most of the Tutsi who had not already fled. By the mid-1960s, Rwanda was firmly under single-party rule, its minority Tutsi population cowed and reduced to about 9% of the populace. Kayibanda's rule, 1962 to 1973, saw Rwanda isolated and economically challenged. Ethnic quotas were introduced. For example, schools and civil service jobs had caps on Tutsi participation, usually no more than 9%, matching their share of the population. Regional favoritism also emerged, as Kayibanda's southern clique dominated the government, breeding resentment in the north. Corruption and economic stagnation set in. Eventually, internal rivalries led to a coup. In July 1973, Defense Minister Juvenal Habyarimana, a northern Hutu general, seized power in a bloodless takeover. Kayibanda was arrested and later died, reportedly starved to death in detention. Habyarimana, from Rwanda's northwestern Gisenyi region, established a more authoritarian but ostensibly stable regime. He formed a new ruling party, the MRND, and for the next 21 years, Rwanda became a one-party state under his firm control. Habyarimana was initially popular for bringing relative peace and for favoring his fellow northerners who felt marginalized by the previous southern-led government. During the 1970s, Rwanda's economy improved somewhat, thanks to high coffee prices, and foreign aid flowed in as Habyarimana maintained a pro-West stance. However, the Tutsi minority remained politically voiceless and largely confined to private business or farming. Anti-Tutsi discrimination, though less overtly violent than in the 1960s, was embedded in the system. By the late 1980s, cracks were appearing in Habyarimana's rule. A drop in global coffee prices devastated Rwanda's export earnings, leading to economic crisis. Discontent simmered among educated youth of both ethnicities over lack of freedoms and opportunity. Crucially, outside Rwanda, the children of the 1959 refugees, a new generation of exiled Tutsis, had come of age, many of them in Uganda. There, Tutsi refugees had fought alongside Yoweri Museveni in the Ugandan Bush War, and some had risen to prominent positions in Uganda's post-war army. These battle-hardened fighters never forgot Rwanda. In October 1990, a rebel army calling itself the Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF, composed mostly of Tutsi exiles and some sympathetic Hutus, invaded northern Rwanda from Uganda, aiming to overthrow Habyarimana and secure the refugees' right to return. The RPF's surprise attack sparked a civil war. Habyarimana's forces, with help from Zaire, DR Congo, and France, which airlifted in supplies and troops to support the regime, managed to halt the RPF's advance. But the invasion sent shockwaves through the Hutu establishment and intensified anti-Tutsi propaganda inside Rwanda. For the next 3 years, on and off fighting raged, mostly in the north. Hundreds of thousands of Hutu villagers were displaced from the war zone, adding to instability. Under international pressure, Habyarimana agreed to negotiate with the RPF and domestic opposition parties. The result was the Arusha Accords of August 1993, a power-sharing agreement that provided for a ceasefire, integration of the armies, return of Tutsi exiles, and a transitional government that would include the RPF. This accord, however, was met with fury by hardline Hutu extremists in Habyarimana's inner circle, who saw it as a betrayal. They began actively planning to torpedo the peace deal. Militant Hutu organizations, including youth militias like the Interahamwe, meaning those who attack together, stocked weapons and drew up hit lists of Tutsi and moderate Hutu opponents. Hate propaganda filled the airwaves of the notorious Radio RTLM, which demonized Tutsis as inyenzi and warned of an impending struggle. Rwanda was a tinderbox, and in April 1994, the match was lit. On the night of April 6, 1994, President Habyarimana's plane, a Falcon 50 jet, was shot down by unknown assailants as it approached Kigali, killing him and the Hutu president of Burundi on board. This assassination was the spark that unleashed one of the worst atrocities of the 20th century, the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Within hours of the crash, extremist military officers and politicians moved to seize control, executing moderate officials who might oppose their plans. Roadblocks sprouted across Kigali and other towns. The Presidential Guard and Interahamwe militia began systematically hunting down Tutsi civilians and any Hutu moderates who might stand in their way. What followed was 100 days of almost unimaginable brutality. Ordinary men, teachers, farmers, even priests, were incited by hate radio and local leaders to take up machetes, clubs, and guns against their neighbors. Entire families were slaughtered in their homes, churches, and places of refuge. Husbands killed wives of the opposite ethnicity. Teachers killed students. The rivers of Rwanda literally ran red with blood as bodies were cast into them. Massacres occurred at schools and churches where Tutsis had gathered hoping to find sanctuary, only to be surrounded and butchered. Women suffered horrific sexual violence. Between 250,000 and 500,000 women were raped during the genocide, often in public and often followed by murder. By the beginning of July 1994, an estimated 800,000 to 1 million Tutsi had been exterminated, roughly 3/4 of Rwanda's Tutsi population, along with tens of thousands of Hutu who opposed the killings. The world largely stood by as this apocalypse unfolded. The UN had only a small peacekeeping force on the ground, led by Canadian General Romeo Dallaire, which was ordered not to intervene and even saw its numbers cut after 10 Belgian peacekeepers were slain. A belated French military intervention, Operation Turquoise, in June created a safe zone in one corner of Rwanda, but by then the genocide was nearly over. Amid the carnage, the rebel RPF resumed its offensive to stop the genocide. Led by Major General Paul Kagame, RPF troops fought their way south and west from their bases in the north. They faced off not only against the Rwandan army and militias committing genocide, but also had to maneuver around fleeing civilians and roadblocks of corpses. Kigali fell to the RPF in early July 1994. By mid-July, the RPF had secured the country, effectively ending the genocide by military force. For Rwanda, an era had ended in ashes. The victorious RPF found a landscape of horrors. Towns filled with mutilated bodies, a society stripped of its members. In many villages, the majority of Tutsi residents were dead, and countless Hutu households had lost loved ones or were implicated in crimes. The country's infrastructure was destroyed, its economy non-functional, and about 2 million of its people, mostly Hutus, including those who had participated in the killings and feared retribution, fled into exile in neighboring Zaire, now DR Congo, Tanzania, and Burundi. Rwanda was, as one observer put it, a nation of widows and orphans, with an estimated 95,000 children left without parents. Post-genocide recovery. Picking up the pieces after July 1994 was an enormous challenge. The RPF established a transitional government of national unity. To signal inclusivity, they appointed a Hutu president, Pastor Bizimungu, while the RPF's Paul Kagame assumed the role of vice president and defense minister. The new government publicly renounced vengeance and emphasized reconciliation, but ensuring security was the first order of business. Refugee camps across the border in Zaire teamed with the defeated Rwandan army and genocidaires who immediately began rearming and launching incursions back into Rwanda. This instability led Rwanda, together with local allies, to invade Zaire in late 1996 to dismantle the camps, a move that spiraled into the First Congo War, toppling the Mobutu regime in Zaire. Meanwhile, inside Rwanda, there were over 100,000 suspected perpetrators of genocide detained in crammed prisons, awaiting justice. The conventional court system could not cope with the volume of cases. In response, Rwanda embarked on a bold experiment in grassroots justice, the Gacaca courts. Based loosely on a traditional community dispute resolution mechanism, Gacaca courts were established in 2001 in villages around the country to try those accused of lower-level crimes during the genocide. Over the next decade, these local courts tried nearly 1,958,000 cases, helping to uncover the truth of what happened and delivering a measure of justice. Though imperfect, there were criticisms of incomplete witness testimony and victor's justice. Gacaca succeeded in processing the bulk of genocide cases by the time it was closed in 2012, and it facilitated the reintegration of many offenders back into their communities after they served their sentences or performed community service. At the same time, Rwanda pursued a policy of national unity. Ethnic labels were officially abolished. No more Hutu or Tutsi on identity cards, and public references to ethnicity were discouraged in an effort to prevent future divisionism. The last Monday of every April was designated a national commemoration week to mourn the genocide, honor the victims, and remind citizens of the consequences of hatred. Across Rwanda, memorials and genocide museums now stand at sites of mass murder, in churches, schools, and road junctions, ensuring that the history, however painful, is not denied or forgotten. The phrase "never again" became a national mantra. The latter half of the 1990s also saw the return of Tutsi refugees from the decades-old diaspora. Hundreds of thousands came home to Rwanda from Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, Europe, and North America. Many found their family lands occupied in their absence. The government addressed this by promoting land-sharing arrangements and creating new settlements, known as Imidugudu, to house both returnees and survivors. Socially, it was a period of immense trauma and tentative healing. Survivors and perpetrators were suddenly neighbors, sometimes even within the same families, as intermarriage had been common. Rebuilding trust was a slow process, often guided by grassroots initiatives, counseling groups, community projects, and messages from churches and government urging forgiveness and reconciliation. Astonishingly, through a combination of justice and reconciliation efforts, Rwanda avoided the cycle of retributive violence that many feared would continue. Politically, Rwanda transitioned under the RPF's watchful eye. In 2000, Vice President Paul Kagame assumed the presidency after Bizimungu resigned amidst a political dispute. A new constitution was promulgated in 2003, enshrining the principle of ethnic unity, and multi-party elections were held, though the RPF and Kagame overwhelmingly dominated the results. By the early 2000s, Rwanda had achieved a fragile stability under a unity government, setting the stage for the ambitious nation-building projects of the next decades. Having explored Rwanda's tumultuous history, we can now examine how Rwanda is governed today and how it navigated the delicate post-genocide political landscape. The next section will delve into politics and governance, exploring how President Kagame's leadership and policies of reconciliation have shaped the nation, and the criticisms and complexities that accompany Rwanda's unique path. In the wake of the genocide, Rwanda's leaders faced the daunting task of forging a stable nation from the wreckage of hatred. Over the past quarter century, the country's politics have been characterized by strong central leadership, an emphasis on reconciliation and national unity, and a controlled civic space aimed at preventing a return to ethnic division. At the center of this story is President Paul Kagame and his ruling party, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF. Post-genocide leadership. After 1994, the transitional government led by the RPF included both Hutu and Tutsi officials in an effort to promote inclusion. A Hutu president, Pastor Bizimungu, served as head of state from 1994 until 2000, while Paul Kagame, the RPF's military commander, who is Tutsi, was vice president and defense minister. In reality, Kagame was the driving force in the new administration. In 2000, he formally assumed the presidency after Bizimungu's resignation. Since then, Kagame has been the predominant figure in Rwandan politics, winning election as president in 2003, 2010, 2017, and most recently 2024, each time by overwhelming margins. The RPF has maintained continuous control of government, partnering with a few smaller parties in what it calls a consensus-oriented system. From the start, Kagame's government set a tone dramatically different from past regimes. The new regime outlawed political organizing along ethnic lines and banned any speech or media that could incite ethnic hatred, a crime known as divisionism. The explicit Hutu-Tutsi power calculus that dominated earlier eras was excised from official rhetoric. Indeed, Kagame famously stated that "we are all Rwandans," and pushed a policy that no citizen should again be labeled by ethnicity. This created a political environment that is ostensibly race-blind, but also highly sensitive. Even historical discussion of ethnic identity became a delicate matter confined largely to structured memorial events. The government's National Unity and Reconciliation Commission embarked on programs to rebuild trust, public workshops, education reforms, and memorialization of the genocide's horrors to educate the youth. Authoritarian stability. Alongside reconciliation, the RPF installed a tightly disciplined political order. Rwanda became, in effect, a one-party dominant state. Opposition parties exist, but those that are tolerated generally accept the broad parameters set by the RPF, such as the taboo on ethnic campaigning. Independent political activity that challenges the ruling narrative has often been suppressed. Some high-profile examples include the arrest and imprisonment of opposition leader Victoire Ingabire in 2010 on charges of threatening state security after she publicly questioned why memorials commemorated only Tutsi victims, and the 2021 terrorism trial of Paul Rusesabagina, a government critic famous for his portrayal in Hotel Rwanda, who was forcibly brought to Rwanda and later sentenced, though eventually pardoned in 2023. Journalists and activists who cross red lines, for instance by accusing the government of human rights abuses or by using ethnic appeals, have faced intimidation, exile, or worse. Several exiled dissidents have been attacked or killed under mysterious circumstances abroad, in cases that observers suspect are the work of Rwandan security operatives. Within Rwanda, media outlets are largely pro-government, and civil society organizations that operate are often aligned with state development goals. Kagame and the RPF justify their tight control by pointing to the fragility of the post-genocide society and the need for unity and rapid development. In their view, the soft pluralism of the early 1990s allowed genocidal ideology to flourish, and they are determined not to repeat that mistake. Under their watch, Rwanda has indeed been free of organized ethnic violence since 1994, an achievement that is no small feat given the country's past. The government is often praised for its efficient administration and lack of corruption. Rwanda routinely ranks among Africa's least corrupt and best governed countries, with technocrats filling the civil service and development plans implemented with near military discipline. Local officials sign performance contracts, Imihigo, each year, pledging to meet concrete targets like building schools or reducing malaria, and they can lose their jobs if they fail. Policymaking is forward-looking and data-driven. For example, officials monitor district-level metrics for poverty reduction, and public meetings involve earnest PowerPoint presentations of progress toward Vision 2020/2050 goals. Social policies under Kagame have been groundbreaking in many respects. Rwanda today boasts a majority female parliament. As of the latest elections, women hold about 60% of the seats, the highest proportion in the world. This was achieved through constitutional guarantees, a 30% quota for women, easily exceeded, and an active effort to empower women after the genocide left so many men dead. Women also occupy many key positions in government and business. The country has made huge strides in health and education. Communal health insurance now covers most of the population. New hospitals and clinics have slashed infant and maternal mortality, and nearly every child is enrolled in primary school. The sense of public order is palpable. Streets are clean, plastic bags are outlawed, and citizens turn out for Umuganda community cleanup days monthly. Traffic is orderly, and crime rates are low. All these successes have earned Rwanda praise as a beacon of stability and progress on a continent too often marred by disorder. Under Kagame's rule, Rwanda has been called Africa's Singapore for its combination of strict governance and economic growth. Yet this progress has come at the cost of political freedom. Critics argue that Rwanda is essentially an authoritarian state behind its gleaming development statistics. Elections are held, but they are not competitive in the way multi-party democracies expect. Kagame's vote shares, officially 95% in 2003, 93% in 2010, and a staggering 99% in 2017, reflect the absence of any viable opposition, and possibly an atmosphere where open dissent is unthinkable for many. Prior to the 2017 election, the Constitution was amended after a referendum in 2015 to allow Kagame to run for a third term despite previous term limits. A change supported by the RPF-dominated parliament and, according to official results, by an overwhelming majority of voters. This amendment reset term counts, permitting Kagame to potentially remain in power until 2034. The amended constitution stipulates a switch to 2 5-year terms after 2017. In line with that, a joint presidential and parliamentary election was held in 2024, and Kagame won another term in office, albeit now under a framework that ostensibly limits him to 2 terms going forward. Western observers and human rights groups often express concern that Rwanda's political space is tightly controlled, and that fear quells genuine pluralism. As one commentary noted, under Kagame's rule, Rwanda made significant progress in key areas, but this does not excuse the president's authoritarianism. Kagame's supporters, however, respond that a strong hand has been necessary to prevent a return to chaos. They point to the government's zero-tolerance stance on divisive ethnic talk, its swift action against corruption and security threats, and the tangible improvements in living standards. In their eyes, freedoms may be curtailed, but this trade-off is warranted to ensure peace and development. Indeed, Kagame remains genuinely popular with many Rwandans, including segments of the Hutu majority, who credit him and the RPF for rescuing the country from collapse and giving it a sense of pride and direction. The government has cultivated a narrative of Agaseke, a Kinyarwanda word for dignity or self-respect, symbolizing Rwanda's desire to chart its own course without excessive dependence or lecturing from foreign powers. This manifests in policies like homegrown community programs and an insistence on finding African solutions to African problems. Today, Rwanda's political system is unique. It is stable, orderly, and ambitious, but also tightly circumscribed. Parliament debates and passes a flurry of laws, often unanimously, but the RPF's influence looms over the legislative and judicial branches. Local government is active and brings services to the people, yet local officials are typically RPF cadres or affiliates, ensuring the party line is followed. Civil society organizations operate largely in partnership with the state, and the media practices self-censorship on sensitive topics. Dissent is often channeled into quiet conversations rather than overt confrontation. Reconciliation and memory. Politically, one of Rwanda's defining achievements under Kagame has been maintaining peace in a society that was once literally at war with itself. Each year in April, the country observes Kwibuka, remembrance, a somber period when politics takes a backseat to collective mourning. The president and other officials lead memorial ceremonies at sites like Gisozi Genocide Memorial in Kigali, where the remains of over 250,000 victims are interred. During Kwibuka, the national flag flutters at half-mast. Survivors share testimonials on radio and television, and the country pauses to reflect on the consequences of ethnic extremism. This state-sanctioned remembrance is part of the political fabric. It reinforces the rationale behind the government's unity policies and its uncompromising stance against any speech that could be interpreted as genocide denial or divisionism, both serious crimes in Rwanda. The mantra, "Never Again," underpins laws and curricula, and it also bolsters the RPF's moral authority to govern. At the same time, there is an undercurrent of unresolved issues. Some Hutu, especially those in exile or quiet corners of the countryside, privately grumble that the official narrative leaves no room to discuss crimes committed against Hutus during the war. The RPF's military campaign in 1994 and its subsequent operations in DR Congo did result in civilian casualties, but inside Rwanda, openly grieving Hutu victims, apart from moderate Hutus, killed in the genocide, is largely taboo, as the government fears that doing so could be used to create a double genocide narrative that dilutes responsibility for the genocide against the Tutsi. This stance has drawn criticism from human rights observers who argue that reconciliation must be a two-way street. Nevertheless, within Rwanda, the vast majority of citizens appear to have accepted, or at least outwardly support, the official line that unity and looking forward are the only path for the nation's survival. In conclusion, Rwanda's political journey since the genocide has been one of remarkable stabilization and reconstruction under an undeniably authoritarian model. Kagame's tenure has provided security and a clear vision for development, raising Rwanda's profile on the world stage as a country that can deliver results. But this has come alongside constraints on democracy and personal freedoms. Whether this model will evolve into a more open system is an open question. For now, Rwandans enjoy peace and growing prosperity, even as they navigate the subtle limits on political expression. As we move on to consider Rwandan society and culture, it's important to remember that the policies and politics of the past decades have profoundly shaped people's daily lives, identities, and how they see themselves as one people, Rwandans, moving beyond the divisions of history. Walking through a village in Rwanda, one is likely to hear the lilting tones of Kinyarwanda, the mother tongue that unites all Rwandans. Unlike many African countries, Rwanda is linguistically and culturally homogeneous. Virtually everyone speaks Kinyarwanda as their first language and identifies with the same cultural heritage. This shared language and culture have been a double-edged sword in Rwanda's history, used to bind people together in times of unity and tragically manipulated to divide them during the genocide. Today, the government emphatically promotes the idea that there is one Rwandan people, the Banyarwanda, even if historically that population was categorized into Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa. In modern Rwanda, ethnic labels carry little official weight. On national IDs and in public discourse, such distinctions are largely absent by design. Demographics and language. Rwanda's population is young, the median age is mid-20s, and growing, with around 13 million people living within a country the size of Vermont. The vast majority, some 83 to 85%, are rural dwellers engaged in farming. The society remains traditionally patriarchal, yet has seen major shifts in gender roles due to both policy and circumstance. In the wake of the 1994 genocide, which left far more women than men alive, women took on unprecedented roles in rebuilding communities and government. a change that has become permanent through intentional empowerment policies. The country is now famous for female representation in leadership, but beyond politics, women are integral at all levels of society, from running market stalls and farms to heading businesses. Kinyarwanda is not only the daily lingua franca, but also a repository of Rwanda's collective wisdom and identity, containing proverbs, poetry, and oral history passed down through generations. In addition to Kinyarwanda, Rwanda today recognizes 3 other official languages: English, French, and Swahili. This polyglot policy reflects the country's diverse international orientation. French became prevalent during Belgian colonial rule and remained the primary foreign language in schools until the 2000s. After the genocide, as Rwanda pivoted towards the Anglophone East African community and forged new alliances, English was adopted as the main language of instruction from 2008 onward. As a result, younger Rwandans in cities now often speak English, or a mix of Kinyarwanda English slang, more comfortably than French, while the older generation may still exclaim bonjour out of habit. Swahili, common in East African trade, was added as an official language in 2017 and is increasingly taught to facilitate regional commerce. Though outside border areas, not many Rwandans are fluent in it yet. Still, in daily life, nearly everyone uses Kinyarwanda to communicate, a powerful factor in Rwanda's sense of national unity. Religion and values. Religion is deeply woven into the fabric of Rwandan society, though it too has a complex legacy. About 90% of Rwandans are Christian, a result of vigorous missionary activity in the 20th century. Roughly half the population is Roman Catholic, a legacy of Belgian rule when Catholicism was encouraged, while a large portion are Protestant or born-again Christians, reflecting revival movements in recent decades. A small but significant minority, 2 to 5%, are Muslim, concentrated in urban centers like Kigali and historical trading towns. Traditional beliefs in ancestors and indigenous deities have largely been subsumed into Christian practice, but echoes remain. For instance, many people still value the intercession of ancestors, or will have a traditional healer alongside their church attendance. Ethical values like Ubuntu, the Pan-African concept of shared humanity, resonate in Rwandan culture, emphasizing community solidarity and empathy. Yet religion in Rwanda cannot be discussed without acknowledging the troubled role of churches in the genocide. Distressingly, many massacres occurred in sanctuaries where people sought refuge, and some clergymen even abetted the violence. This history has led to soul-searching among Rwandans. In the genocide's aftermath, churches became places of both atonement and healing. Today, Rwandans pack Sunday services, singing gospel songs with gusto and praying for a peaceful future. The government works closely with religious organizations on social programs, but it also tightly regulates them, requiring pastors to be properly trained and even temporarily closing thousands of small Pentecostal prosperity churches in 2018 to ensure basic safety and accountability. The overarching cultural focus is on unity and development, and religious communities are largely aligned with those national goals, preaching reconciliation and hard work as civic virtues. Family and social life. The typical Rwandan family in the countryside starts the day early. At dawn, you might see children in neatly pressed school uniforms walking down dirt paths to class, and parents tending fields or milking the family cow. Extended family ties are strong. It's common for households to include not just the nuclear family, but also grandparents or orphaned relatives being cared for by kin. Rwandans traditionally have many children. In the past, a large family was seen as a sign of wealth and blessing, but attitudes are gradually changing. The government has promoted family planning, and the average number of children per woman has dropped in recent years as more parents aim to invest in education and improve the quality of life for fewer children. Still, in rural areas, families of 5 or 6 kids are not unusual, and older siblings often help raise the younger ones. Respect for elders is a cornerstone of Rwandan manners. Greetings are elaborate and polite. A young person will often bow slightly or grasp the right wrist with the left hand when shaking an older person's hand as a sign of respect. Mwaramutse, good morning, or Mwiriwe, good afternoon, are invariably followed by amakuru. What's the news? How are you? With inquiries about one's health, the family, and even the cows if one has them. Social visits in Rwanda often involve sharing food or drink. It's common to be offered a banana beer or a cup of ikivuguto, fermented milk, when visiting a rural home, reflecting the traditional importance of bananas and cattle in the culture. In cities, visits might revolve around tea, coffee, or a Fanta. Rwandans have a famous love of soft drinks. One striking feature a visitor quickly notices is how clean and orderly the society is. From the smallest village to busy downtown Kigali, litter is rare. This is partly due to strict laws. There are fines for littering and plastic bags have been banned for over a decade. And partly due to community practices like Umuganda, the monthly nationwide community workday when everyone, including the president, participates in communal work. On the last Saturday morning of each month, traffic stops and Rwandans come together in their neighborhoods to sweep streets, trim bushes, repair public facilities, or build homes for the vulnerable. It's both a practical civic duty and a cultural ritual that reinforces solidarity and equality. On this day, all are simply neighbors working side by side. Social life in Rwanda has traditionally revolved around the cycles of agriculture and communal gatherings. In the evenings after the day's work, neighbors might gather around a radio to catch the news or a popular Rwandan music program. In rural communities, people help each other in cooperative groups called Ubudehe, traditionally to accomplish tasks like tilling a field or building a house, an embodiment of the proverb, "Unity is strength." When a family hosts an event like a wedding, birth celebration, or funeral, the whole village often contributes food, labor, or financial support, knowing that each will receive the same when their turn comes. Music, dance, and art. Rwandan culture is rich with music and dance that have been passed down through generations. Perhaps the most iconic is the Intore dance, also known as the Dance of Heroes. Once performed in the royal court to celebrate victories, Intore is a high-energy spectacle. Male dancers wearing grass wigs and carrying spears leap into the air and kick with athletic prowess, while female dancers in flowing gowns glide with graceful arm movements, like reeds swaying in a gentle breeze. The dancers' synchronized moves, accompanied by the urgent drumming of the ngoma, drums, and the melodious tones of the inanga, traditional string instrument, evoke the prowess of warriors and the elegance of Rwanda's queens. To witness an Intore performance today, often staged at national celebrations or for visitors, is to glimpse Rwanda's proud pre-colonial heritage alive in the modern era. Traditional music often features the inanga, a lyre-like string instrument on which a solo artist might strum a hypnotic tune while reciting poetry or folklore. One famous traditional song form is ibikuba, poetic ballads sometimes used to subtly criticize or advise rulers in the old days. There are also traditional dances for various occasions. One for cow herding, imitating the graceful gait of cattle. One for marriage ceremonies. One for harvest celebrations. At weddings today, it's common to see troops perform the graceful women's dance with angled arms and subtle footwork, symbolizing respect and joy for the new couple. The audience will ululate in appreciation as the dancers, clad in umushanana, the traditional formal attire, move with poise. Modern Rwandan music blends these traditions with contemporary influences. Urban youth groove to Afrobeat, reggae, hip-hop, and homegrown Rwandan pop. Artists like Medi and the Ben, who fuse R&B with Kinyarwanda lyrics, are regional stars. Kigali's nightlife includes karaoke bars and clubs where young professionals dance to the latest Nigerian hits or Congolese rumba. Yet even contemporary songs often carry messages of unity, hope, or remembrance, reflecting the collective consciousness of the nation. Each year, on the last Saturday of September, Rwanda holds a hugely popular national event, Cuisine, the baby gorilla naming ceremony. Though ostensibly about conservation, the event is a cultural festival too, with traditional dancers, drummers, and singers performing in a carnival atmosphere that is broadcast live across the country. Rwandan visual art and crafts are distinctive, albeit less internationally known. Perhaps the most recognizable craft is the Agaseke. the woven basket with a tall pointed lid, sometimes called the peace basket. Women in rural co-ops weave these from sisal and papyrus in striking geometric patterns, a skill passed from mother to daughter. The baskets became a symbol of reconciliation when women from both Hutu and Tutsi backgrounds wove them together post-genocide as a means of healing and earning income. Another unique art form is Imigongo painting, originating from the eastern province. Artists create swirling black, white, and earthy red designs using dried cow dung as both canvas and texture. This art was nearly lost in the genocide, as many artists were killed. But it has seen a revival, with cooperatives near Kibungo producing Imigongo pieces that now adorn Kigali coffee shops and hotel lobbies as stylish decor. Wood carving, pottery, an area traditionally dominated by the Twa community, and beadwork are other elements of the cultural tapestry. Dress and fashion. Traditional Rwandan attire is elegant in its simplicity. The classic women's garment, the umushanana, consists of a flowing dress or skirt with a matching sash draped over one shoulder. Often made of colorful fabrics or silky materials, it is worn at weddings, celebrations, and by Intore female dancers. Men historically wore a loose robe and carried a herder's stick, though today a suit or tailored shirt is more common formal wear. One notable traditional fashion was the Amasunzu hairstyle, once worn by both men and unmarried women, where hair is sculpted into crescent-shaped crests. You'll still see Amasunzu styles at cultural performances, or sometimes by brides and grooms during traditional wedding ceremonies as a nod to heritage. On a daily basis, however, most Rwandans dress in contemporary styles: slacks, dresses, and second-hand Western clothing sold in local markets, popularly called kagwa. In cities, there's a small but growing fashion scene. Designers blend African prints with modern cuts, and Kigali has hosted fashion shows promoting Made in Rwanda clothing lines. The government encourages local production in everything from clothing to furniture as part of fostering national pride and economic self-reliance. Etiquette and character. Foreigners visiting Rwanda often remark on the polite reserve and dignity of its people. Public behaviors tend to err on the side of modesty. For instance, public displays of extreme anger or affection are relatively uncommon. Rwandans value umuko, good manners, discipline. Children are taught not to raise their voices to elders, and even in disagreement, direct confrontation is usually avoided in favor of a more roundabout, respectful dialogue. This can sometimes puzzle outsiders. A Rwandan might smile or say yes out of politeness even when in disagreement. But it stems from a cultural emphasis on social harmony. At the same time, Rwandans are warm and hospitable. If you greet someone in Kinyarwanda, their face is likely to break into a broad grin at your effort, and they may affectionately correct your pronunciation or immediately invite you to visit their home. Importantly, the social landscape of Rwanda was irrevocably shaped by the events of 1994. Nearly every family lost someone in the genocide or the civil war, and there are also perpetrators in many communities who have served their sentences and returned home. As such, forgiveness and reconciliation are not abstract ideas but daily realities. There are support groups that bring survivors and ex-prisoners together to talk and engage in joint projects like building houses for the needy. The fact that Rwanda has remained peaceful is a testament to its people's resilience and to a collective decision, consciously reinforced by cultural and political means, to prioritize a shared national identity over any differences. Today's Rwandan society is thus a complex weave of old and new, trauma and healing, discipline and creativity. It is a place where a millennial in Kigali might develop apps by day and go to a traditional dowry ceremony, gusaba, on the weekend dressed in a tuxedo and umushanana. It's where villagers gather to watch televised football matches. Rwandans are passionate fans of English Premier League teams, but also rise at dawn to hoe each other's fields in solidarity. The culture has proven adaptable. Ancient practices like Imihigo, pledges of achievement, have been repurposed into modern performance contracts for officials, and traditional proverbs are used to explain the importance of everything from breastfeeding to tax compliance in public service announcements. In Rwanda, culture is not static. It is a living toolkit being used to rebuild and redefine the nation. With an understanding of Rwandan society and cultural values, we can appreciate how these feed into other aspects of life, from urban development to international relations. First, let's explore Rwanda's urban transformation and infrastructure, looking at how cities like Kigali are evolving in the country's push to modernize. Rwanda's landscape of hills is not only picturesque farms and forests, it is also home to bustling cities that have undergone a dramatic metamorphosis in recent decades. At the forefront is the capital, Kigali, a city often held up as a model of urban development in Africa. By African standards, Kigali is a small capital, around 1.2 million residents, but it leaves a big impression. Built across several hills and valleys at the country's center, Kigali greets visitors with clean, landscaped streets and an evident sense of order. As one drives from the airport into town, neatly trimmed boulevards and modern buildings line the way. The city center sits on Nyarugenge Hill, where Rwanda's new prosperity is on display. Glass facade bank towers, the towering Kigali City Tower shopping complex, and the eye-catching Kigali Convention Center, whose dome-shaped structure glows with multicolored lights each night. This tidy downtown hums with business by day and relaxes by night as people gather in cafes and rooftop lounges. Remarkably, it's hard to find a stray piece of litter. Public cleanliness is a matter of pride and law here. A legacy of policies like the plastic bag ban and monthly Umuganda. Kigali's transformation since the 1990s is astounding. In 1994, it was a shattered town littered with debris and haunted by silence. Today, it is routinely lauded as one of Africa's safest, cleanest cities, a place where you can stroll on manicured sidewalks or catch a public bus without worry. Traffic flows smoothly along upgraded roads, guided by functioning traffic lights and the occasional police officer, who, by regional standards, are unusually disciplined and unbribable. Unique to Kigali are the moto taxi drivers in their reflective vests and helmets, who weave through traffic carrying passengers efficiently from neighborhood to neighborhood. The city introduced a standard meter system and mandated helmets for these motorcycle taxis, making them a relatively safe and regulated form of transport, an example of the city's commitment to order. Kigali's urban planning consciously aims to avoid the chaos seen in some fast-growing cities. The city is divided into well-demarcated districts such as Nyarugenge, the traditional center, Gasabo, home to government ministries and upscale residential areas like Nyarutarama, and Kicukiro, a mix of residential and industrial zones. Zoning laws restrict informal settlements in the core city. As a result, many lower-income residents live in peri-urban areas or new planned communities. In recent years, the government has relocated people from high-risk slums on steep hillsides into modern apartment complexes or newly developed rural model villages, both to improve living standards and to mitigate deadly landslides during heavy rains. Kigali's growth has been guided by a master plan that envisions a green, efficient metropolis. One can already see pieces of this vision. There are urban wetlands turned into eco-parks that help with flood control, public gardens filled with native plants, and an increasing number of energy-efficient buildings. In 2020, the city pedestrianized its main commercial boulevard, creating a car-free zone downtown where young people now enjoy evening strolls and vendors set up weekend markets. A rarity in many African cities reliant on cars. Technology and innovation are also part of Kigali's identity. The city boasts robust fiber-optic internet coverage and was among the first in Africa to provide widespread 4G LTE and even pilot 5G in select areas. Cashless payment systems are ubiquitous in public buses. A system called Tap and Go uses smart cards. And moto taxi drivers can be hailed via smartphone apps. The government operates online portals for everything from registering a business to paying taxes, reflecting Rwanda's push to be a regional tech hub. Fittingly, Kigali hosts a state-of-the-art innovation center at Kigali Innovation City, a developing tech campus that houses institutions like Carnegie Mellon University's Africa campus and startups in fields from fintech to drone aviation. Plans are underway to transform Kigali into a fully smart city with initiatives such as cashless public transportation, smart street lighting, and high-tech traffic management. Beyond Kigali, Rwanda is nurturing several secondary cities to decentralize growth. These include Musanze in the north, Huye in the south, Rubavu in the west, Rusizi in the southwest, Nyagatare in the northeast, and Muhanga in the central south. Each of these towns has seen infrastructure upgrades and population increases as the government invests in regional development. For example, Musanze, formerly Ruhengeri, has blossomed as the gateway for guerrilla tourism, with new hotels, paved roads, and even a campus of the University of Rwanda focused on agriculture and veterinary sciences. Huye, formerly Butere, the old intellectual capital, remains an academic hub with the National University's main campus and a rich cultural scene. Its leafy avenues and the ethnographic museum reflect a slower pace, but recent projects have improved its water supply and roads. Rubavu, Gizenyi, on Lake Kivu, has become a resort town with a lakefront promenade where locals and tourists alike watch stunning sunsets over the water. It also serves as a busy border post to the Democratic Republic of Congo, illustrating Rwanda's cross-border economic ties. Infrastructure backbone. The connective tissue binding these cities is Rwanda's improving infrastructure. Despite its hilly terrain, Rwanda now boasts a paved road network that expanded from just 560 kilometers in 1994 to about 2,650 kilometers by 2024, linking all major towns. A journey from Kigali to Rusizi that once took the better part of a day on winding dirt roads can now be done in a few hours on smooth tarmac. Feeder roads are also being upgraded to help farmers get produce to markets. Public transportation between cities is reliable, handled by private bus companies operating on schedule with modern buses. In Kigali, a public bus system with color-coded routes and designated stops has brought order to urban transit, complementing the ubiquitous motorcycle taxis. Rwanda's electricity grid has expanded rapidly, reaching over 70% of households by 2025, from less than 10% 2 decades prior. This expansion includes a mix of on-grid power and off-grid solutions like solar home systems in remote areas. Driving through the countryside at night, one now sees pinpoints of electric light in villages that recently had none. Power generation itself is a diverse mix. Hydroelectric stations on rivers, methane gas extraction from Lake Kivu, a unique project tapping the lake's dissolved gas to generate electricity, and solar farms such as the Agahozo Shalom Youth Village solar plant that was once East Africa's largest. Consequently, Rwanda has substantially reduced the load shedding that plagued it in the early 2000s. In cities, streetlights illuminate main roads, often solar-powered LED lights that align with Rwanda's green ambitions. Clean water access has also improved, with new water treatment plants and pipelines delivering potable water to urban neighborhoods and rural centers alike. Water taps in villages, sometimes built through Umuganda community efforts, save women and children from walking long distances to streams. Kigali's water supply, drawn from the Nyabarongo River and other sources, meets the needs of its growing population most days, though rationing still occurs in some hillside districts during dry spells. The government aims for universal water access by 2024, drilling new boreholes and protecting catchment areas to ensure sustainability. By 2024, about 87% of Rwandans had access to clean water, up from just 26% in 1992. Another leap in connectivity is on the horizon. Rwanda is partnering with neighbors to build a regional standard gauge railway that would connect Kigali to the port of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. If realized, this rail link will dramatically lower the cost of importing and exporting goods for this landlocked country. In the meantime, the upgrade of the central rail line in Tanzania and efficient cargo handling in Dar es Salaam, combined with Rwanda's own investment in logistics, like an inland container depot in Kigali, have somewhat eased the burdens of being landlocked. Rwanda's air transport has seen impressive growth as well. The national carrier, Rwandair, has expanded from a tiny fleet in the early 2000s to a modern airline that flies to over 24 destinations in Africa, the Middle East, Asia, and Europe. Its light blue planes are a source of pride for Rwandans, a symbol that their once isolated country is now connected to the world. To support this growth, Rwanda is constructing a new international airport in Bugesera, southeast of Kigali, designed to handle millions of passengers a year and set to become one of the most modern in the region. The project, partly funded by foreign investment, underscores Rwanda's vision of becoming a regional conference and tourism hub. Domestically, smaller airports and airstrips, like those in Musanze and Akagera, have been refurbished to promote tourism and emergency services, such as medical drone deployment sites. Smart and green growth. Urbanization in Rwanda comes with a conscious effort to remain green and sustainable. Kigali has been organizing car-free days twice a month, where certain city streets are closed to vehicles and turned into pop-up exercise and wellness zones. Thousands of residents come out to jog, cycle, do group aerobics, or get free health checkups provided by clinics that set up tents on the street. The city's master plan includes creating more public parks, something already visible in places like the lush car-free zone downtown, and the Nyandungu Urban Wetland Park, a formerly degraded wetland restored into an educational eco-park with walkways and picnic spots. Pilot projects are underway to introduce electric motorbikes and buses to cut down on air pollution, which is currently low by regional standards but expected to rise with more vehicles. The government has also partnered with companies to install public Wi-Fi hotspots in buses and at transit terminals, aligning with the smart city ethos. Ambitiously, Rwanda has launched the Green City Kigali initiative, a plan to build a new neighborhood from scratch on sustainable principles, with eco-friendly housing for low and middle-income families, solar energy, rainwater harvesting, and ample green spaces. This would be one of Africa's first truly green planned communities if it comes to fruition, serving as a template for future urban expansion. Outside the cities, urbanization's counterpart is rural development. The government has encouraged clustered village settlements, Imidugudu, instead of isolated homesteads, to more efficiently provide services like electricity, schools, and health posts. As one travels across Rwanda, one notices many neat rows of new houses with red iron sheets, often built on government credit for villagers, replacing older scattered thatched huts. These planned villages often feature a primary school, a health center, and a market at their core, reflecting an integrated approach to improving rural living standards. All these efforts in urban planning and infrastructure aim at one thing: improving the quality of life for Rwandans while steering the country toward modernity. They also tie into Rwanda's aspiration to be a regional player, which is evident in how it manages relationships beyond its borders and its role on the international stage. To understand that, we now turn to Rwanda's international relations, examining how this small country has leveraged diplomacy, peacekeeping, and regional integration to amplify its influence in Africa and beyond. From the trauma of 1994, Rwanda has emerged with a proactive foreign policy and outsized influence on the regional and even global stage. Under President Kagame's leadership, Rwanda has crafted an image of a country that is forward-looking, self-reliant, and ready to contribute to solving international challenges, a stark contrast to the passive victim narrative of the genocide era. Rwanda's international relations are characterized by active engagement in peacekeeping, strategic diplomacy, and a careful balancing of partnerships with both Western and African powers. Regional diplomacy. Geographically, Rwanda lies at the heart of the volatile Great Lakes region, and its relationships with immediate neighbors have been complex. The most fraught is with the Democratic Republic of Congo to the west. In the late 1990s, Rwanda twice sent its army deep into the DRC, initially to pursue the genocidal militias, ex-FAR Interahamwe, that had fled Rwanda and were using refugee camps as bases, and subsequently to overthrow the regime of Mobutu Sese Seko. These interventions sparked the First and Second Congo Wars, drawing in multiple African nations. Although Rwanda officially withdrew its forces from Congo in 2002, it has continued to be accused of meddling in eastern DRC's conflicts. The Rwandan government asserts it must secure its border against the FDLR, a remnant militia of genocidaires operating in Congo, and denies direct support to Congolese rebel groups. Nevertheless, UN and human rights reports have periodically alleged Rwandan backing of rebels such as the M23, a predominantly Tutsi rebel group that has fought the Congolese army in recent years. tensions flared again in 2022 to 2023 as M23 launched a major offensive in eastern DRC. Congo accused Rwanda of aiding the rebels, while Rwanda counter-accused Congo of collaborating with the FDLR. Diplomatic relations between Kigali and Kinshasa have seesawed between cooperation and confrontation. Periodic summits mediated by Angola and Kenya have sought to ease the strain, but mutual distrust runs deep. Despite these issues, Rwanda and DRC do have economic ties. The bustling cross-border trade at Goma Gisenyi sees goods and people flowing daily, and Rwanda is keen to maintain stability for the sake of commerce and regional integration. To the north, Rwanda's relationship with Uganda has been akin to that of siblings who alternate between camaraderie and rivalry. Uganda was a crucial supporter of the RPF during the Civil War. Kagame himself grew up as a refugee in Uganda and served in its army. But by the late 1990s, Rwandan and Ugandan forces clashed in DRC over influence. More recently, a diplomatic rift emerged in 2017 to 2019 as Rwanda accused Uganda of harboring dissidents and spies hostile to Kigali, while Uganda accused Rwanda of espionage on its soil. This led to a dramatic 2-year closure of the main border crossing at Gatuna, hurting trade. The standoff was resolved in 2022 after mediation, with the border reopening and a thaw in relations, helped by high-level visits, including Uganda's powerful first son reaching out to Kagame in a much-publicized meeting. Today, the two countries cooperate within the East African community, but a wary undertone remains. With Burundi to the south, relations have been tense since 2015, when Burundi's then-president accused Rwanda of backing a failed coup against him. The two nations share a similar ethnic makeup and history, both were part of German East Africa, but political mistrust led to a nearly closed border for several years. Only in 2020 to 2021, after a change of leadership in Burundi, did diplomatic ties start to improve, with border posts reopening in 2022 and exchanges of ambassadors underway. Both Kigali and Gacaca seem keen to mend fences, aware that stability in one benefits the other. Despite these bilateral frictions, Rwanda has embraced regional integration as a cornerstone of its foreign policy. It joined the East African Community, EAC, in 2007, aligning itself with Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, South Sudan, and most recently DR Congo in a common market and, eventually, a monetary union. Rwandans can now travel freely with national ID cards to neighboring countries, and the country has harmonized regulations in areas like education and immigration with its EAC partners. Kagame has often been at the forefront of pushing the EAC's agenda, for instance, advocating for infrastructure projects like the standard gauge railway linking the Great Lakes to the Indian Ocean. Rwanda's voice in EAC meetings is taken seriously, punchier than one might expect from a nation of its size. Peacekeeping and international security. Perhaps the arena where Rwanda's influence is most positively felt is peacekeeping. The memory of the UN's failure in 1994 drives Rwanda to contribute robustly to United Nations peacekeeping missions. As of the mid-2020s, Rwanda is consistently among the top African troop contributors to UN missions. Rwandan Blue Helmets have served in conflict zones such as Darfur, Sudan, South Sudan, Central African Republic, Mali, and elsewhere. They are often praised for their discipline and effectiveness, traits stemming from the RPF military culture. In missions like the UNAMID in Darfur and MINUSCA in Central African Republic, Rwandan contingents took on challenging tasks of civilian protection. Notably, Rwanda has also sent high numbers of female peacekeepers and police, leading by example in gender inclusion. This peacekeeping role has given Rwanda moral authority on the global stage, framing its army not as a regional aggressor, as critics claim in DRC, but as a force for stability and humanitarian protection. It's a point of pride domestically. Rwandans see their troops helping prevent elsewhere the kinds of atrocities that were not prevented at home. Rwanda's contributions aren't limited to UN missions. In recent years, at the request of other governments, Rwanda has directly sent forces to help quell conflicts. In 2021, Rwanda deployed around 1,000 troops to northern Mozambique to assist that country's army in combating an Islamist insurgency. The Rwandan forces, agile and battle-tested, made swift progress, reclaiming key towns from insurgents within months. This expedition earned international commendation and demonstrated how Rwanda's military, despite the country's small size, can project power effectively. Likewise, Rwanda sent police units to Haiti in 2010 to help after the earthquake, and has security arrangements with countries like the Central African Republic, where Rwandan special forces help guard the CAR's president and have fought rebels as part of a bilateral agreement. These actions have enhanced Rwanda's reputation as a provider of security in a troubled region. African and global diplomacy. On the continent, Kagame has become an elder statesman and an advocate for African solutions. In 2018, he was elected chair of the African Union, AU, and spearheaded institutional reforms aimed at making the AU more financially independent and efficient. One of his initiatives was to introduce a 0.2% levy on eligible imports to fund the AU, reducing reliance on foreign donors, a policy that aligned with Rwanda's ethos of self-reliance. Under his AU leadership, the Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, was launched, and Kagame hosted African heads of state in Kigali to sign this historic free trade pact. Even after his AU chairmanship, he continues to be involved in Pan-African diplomacy, often mediating in crises. For example, he was part of efforts to negotiate ceasefires in the eastern DRC conflict and has been a vocal proponent of closer East African integration. Rwanda's growing diplomatic clout is illustrated by the international roles it has assumed. The country won a non-permanent seat on the UN Security Council in 2013 to 2014, where it used its voice to highlight African conflicts and champion the principle of the responsibility to protect, to prevent genocides. In 2019, Rwandan economist Dr. Donald Kaberuka, a former finance minister, completed 2 terms as president of the African Development Bank, reflecting the esteem Rwandan technocrats enjoy. In 2022, Rwanda was chosen to host the African Medicines Agency headquarters, a new continental body akin to Africa's FDA, with a gleaming building inaugurated in Kigali. That same year, Kigali hosted the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, CHOGM, a large summit of leaders from over 50 countries, which signaled Rwanda's prominent standing in the Commonwealth. Rwanda joined the Commonwealth in 2009, despite having no colonial ties to Britain, one of only a few countries to enter by choice. The successful COG, complete with royals, prime ministers, and lavish cultural showcases, was a coming-of-age moment for Rwanda on the diplomatic stage. Rwanda maintains a delicate diplomatic balance among global powers. It enjoys strong relations with the United States and United Kingdom, both major aid donors and strategic allies. The UK in particular has forged an unconventional partnership with Rwanda. In 2022, the 2 countries signed a migrant relocation agreement whereby asylum seekers arriving in Britain could be resettled in Rwanda. Kigali presented this deal as an innovative solution to a global problem and an opportunity to receive investment. Britain committed funds to support the resettlements. The plan has been controversial and faced legal challenges in the UK, but Rwanda has stood by it, emphasizing its capacity to offer migrants a dignified new life. With the US, Rwanda has cooperated closely on counterterrorism and military training. American officials often cite Rwanda as a success story of development, though occasional friction arises over human rights concerns. For instance, the US called for fair trial standards in the Rusesabagina case. Relations with France, long fraught, have dramatically improved in recent years. For over a decade after the genocide, Kigali accused France of having aided the genocidal regime, and France refused to acknowledge any responsibility. Diplomatic ties were severed from 2006 to 2009, but a thaw began around 2017, culminating in an impactful visit by French President Emmanuel Macron in 2021. At the Kigali Genocide Memorial, Macron acknowledged that France bore a grave responsibility for failing to prevent the genocide, words that stopped short of a full apology, but went further than any French leader before. This moment of contrition paved the way for a reset. Since then, France and Rwanda have resumed military cooperation. French troops participate in joint exercises in Rwanda, and cultural exchange is flourishing, with French language education being reinvigorated alongside English. A notable outcome of renewed ties was the election of Rwanda's former foreign minister, Louise Mushikiwabo, as Secretary General of La Francophonie, the international organization of French-speaking countries, in 2018, an ironic and symbolic bridge given Rwanda's bilingual shift. Rwanda also cultivates relationships with emerging powers. China is a visible presence. Chinese firms built some of Rwanda's landmark projects, the convention center and roads, for example. And China provides loans and investments with no political strings attached. Kagame has visited Beijing multiple times, and Chinese language classes have popped up in Kigali. India, Turkey, and Israel are among other nations increasing trade and cooperation with Rwanda, drawn by its stability and investor-friendly environment. Soft power and image. A key aspect of Rwanda's international relations is image management. The government has invested heavily in branding Rwanda as a secure, corruption-free, and business-friendly destination, the Singapore of Africa narrative. International conferences like the World Economic Forum on Africa have been hosted in Kigali's conference halls. Rwanda's national carrier's jets bear the slogan "Visit Rwanda," which also appears on the jerseys of top European football clubs like Arsenal and Paris Saint-Germain, thanks to sponsorship deals aimed at boosting tourism and name recognition. The genocide commemoration activities each April have become international events, with foreign dignitaries attending and the UN annually observing April 7th as the International Day of Reflection on the 1994 genocide. Through these memorials, Rwanda wields a certain moral authority, reminding the world of the cost of inaction. Additionally, Rwanda leverages its cultural diplomacy. For instance, sending Intore dancers and drummers to perform at global cultural expos, or showcasing Rwandan coffee and crafts at international trade fairs. Its athletes, like the national cycling team that competes in events abroad, inspiring enough to earn Rwanda hosting rights for the 2025 UCI Road Cycling World Championships, the first time that event will be in Africa, also carry the flag high. Of course, Rwanda's international engagement is not without controversy. Human rights organizations frequently criticize the Rwandan government's harsh treatment of opposition and its actions in the DRC, urging donor countries to reconsider unconditional support. Countries like the UK and US walk a tightrope, valuing Rwanda's stability and contributions to peacekeeping, while occasionally pressing Kagame's government to open up politically. Rwanda's leadership, however, has shown little tolerance for external lectures, often responding that Rwandans themselves have chosen their path, and that Western critics should remember their own failures in 1994. This assertiveness has won Rwanda respect in many parts of Africa, where it is seen as a country that won't be bullied by more powerful nations. In summation, Rwanda's foreign policy is assertive and multifaceted. From leading regional bodies and deploying peacekeepers, to brokering innovative international deals and rebuilding relationships with former adversaries, Rwanda punches well above its weight. It has repositioned itself from a ward of the international community to a contributor, hosting refugees evacuated from Libya, sending doctors to countries in need during COVID-19, and advocating globally for the prevention of genocide and mass atrocities. As a result, Kigali, once a place the world associated only with tragedy, is now a frequent stop for diplomats, investors, and tourists alike. The country's journey from pariah to partner in international affairs is yet another remarkable chapter in the Rwanda story. Having explored Rwanda's interactions on the world stage, we now turn back inward to daily life, to the flavors of Rwandan cuisine, the passions of its sports, the strides in education and healthcare, and the spirit of innovation at the grassroots level that together paint a portrait of Rwanda's Renaissance. Rwandan cuisine is hearty, homegrown, and deeply tied to the agricultural cycle. It's a cuisine that hasn't widely traveled the globe, so visitors are often delighted by its simple yet satisfying flavors. At its core are the staples that thrive in Rwanda's rich soils: bananas, plantains, sweet potatoes, maize, beans, and cassava. In most Rwandan homes, meat is used sparingly. Many meals are entirely plant-based, flavored by the freshness of the ingredients and modest seasoning. A typical traditional meal might be a plate of fluffy ugali, a stiff porridge made from maize or cassava flour, accompanied by a savory sauce of beans or isombe, which is a beloved dish of boiled cassava leaves mashed together with ground peanuts to a creamy, spinach-like consistency. One cannot mention Rwandan food without talking about bananas. They are ubiquitous. Beyond the sweet yellow fruits eaten ripe or steamed as plantains, called matuk in the region, bananas form the base of a popular alcoholic beverage, urwagwa, a mildly sweet banana beer brewed in clay pots. In villages, men will gather to share a long straw inserted into a communal clay jug of urwagwa, bonding over its gentle buzz. Bananas are also simmered with beans to make a filling stew, or fried as delicious chips sold by street vendors. Brochettes might just be Rwanda's most famous dish for travelers. These are skewers of marinated meat roasted over open coals, sold at virtually every roadside bar and eatery. Goat brochettes are the classic, juicy chunks of goat with a bit of fat for flavor, often separated by slices of green pepper or onion. But you can also find beef or fish brochettes near lakes. They arrive sizzling off the grill, typically accompanied by plump-baked ibitoke, plantains, or Irish potatoes that Rwanda grows in abundance in its cool highlands. Enjoyed with a dollop of pili-pili chili for those who like heat, brochettes are the quintessential bar snack, best savored with a cold local beer as you watch a football match on TV in a Kigali tavern. Speaking of beer, Rwanda has its popular commercial brews, Primus and Skol lagers, but traditional fermented drinks still hold their own in rural life. Besides banana beer, there's ikigaj, a thick and earthy sorghum beer often drunk from a shared gourd at cultural ceremonies. And for those who don't take alcohol, ikivuguto is a treat. Essentially Rwanda's version of kefir, it's fermented cow's milk with a tangy flavor, sometimes spiced with a bit of tea or sorghum flour. Milk itself is almost sacred in Rwandan culture. Cattle-herding Tutsi communities especially prize milk as a staple of the diet. Even today, milk bars exist in Kigali. Simple cafes where, instead of beer, patrons sit on stools to enjoy a large glass of fresh milk, cold or boiled, or yogurt, often with a sweetener. Daily meals in Rwanda are built around what is harvested. In the morning, a farmer might boil ibijumba, orange-fleshed sweet potatoes, and serve them with a mug of tea for breakfast. Lunch, the main meal of the day, could be a spread of beans, steamed green bananas, and maybe a bit of sombe, another term for cassava leaves, with ground nut sauce. On special occasions or for urban families, you'll see agataro, a platter heaped with a little of everything: rice, plantains, chips, beans, and maybe chunks of fried pork or beef stew to share. Hot pili-pili sauce made from Scotch bonnet peppers sits on the side for those who dare. One distinctive ingredient in Rwandan cooking is ibihaza, pumpkin. Pumpkins are diced and stewed with corn kernels to create a lightly sweet, nourishing dish that pairs wonderfully with a cup of Rwanda's famous tea. And speaking of tea and coffee, Rwanda's high-altitude tea plantations and coffee farms produce some of the world's finest brews. Yet traditionally, Rwandans themselves didn't consume much of these cash crops. That has changed. Kigali now has trendy coffee shops where young professionals sip espresso made from locally grown beans. Tea is drunk daily, often in British-influenced style with milk and sugar, a holdover from colonial times, or spiced with ginger. For the adventurous palate, Rwanda offers some unique tastes as well. In rural areas near lakes, you might encounter isambaza, tiny dried sardine-like fish from Lake Kivu, sautéed with onions and tomatoes, packing an umami punch when eaten with plantains. And then there is the Rwandan love of akabenzi, literally little bens, a humorous nickname for fried chunks of pork, as prized here as a Mercedes-Benz car. Grilled pork is a favorite in roadside taverns. Ordering akabenzi will get you a plate of crispy pork bits, often served with chili and lime, a guilty pleasure for many city dwellers. Rwandans have a proverb, Wanda mu rugo, umweko wundi uramureka. When you visit someone's home, you follow their cooking spoon. It speaks to the deep culture of hospitality. Guests are treated to the best a family can offer. If you visit a rural household, expect to be loaded with food, piles of sweet bananas, roasted maize, or whatever is in season, and it's impolite to refuse. Food is how Rwandans show love and respect. Even at commemoration gatherings or community meetings, huge pots of beans and plantains are often cooked to feed all attendees. In cities, diets are shifting somewhat. Bread, chapati, flatbread introduced by Indian influence in East Africa, and even pizza and burgers have found their way onto Kigali menus. International cuisines like Chinese, Italian, and West African can be found in the capital. But at the heart of it, even urbanites cherish a home-cooked meal of umuchiri and ibiharage, rice and beans, or bugali with stew. It's common to see a businessman in a suit eagerly digging into a rustic plate at a local melange buffet, where for a few dollars you get all-you-can-eat traditional fare. Rwandan cuisine may not be as famous as its Ethiopian or West African counterparts, but it leaves a lasting impression through its freshness and the communal way it is enjoyed. Food is not overly spiced or greasy. It's meant to be gentle on the stomach and shared in abundance. It mirrors the Rwandan ethos, unpretentious, nourishing, and brought to life by the company of others. As we finish our taste of Rwanda, we turn now to another source of collective excitement and pride: the world of sports, where Rwanda is making its mark in more ways than one. Sports have a special place in Rwanda's journey of healing and national pride. In the aftermath of tragedy, athletic activities became a means to foster unity. A football team fields Hutu and Tutsi players wearing the same jersey, a symbol of how the country can work together towards a common goal. Rwandans are passionate about sports both as participants and fans, and the country's leadership has invested heavily in developing athletics infrastructure not only for prestige, but also as an avenue for youth development and international recognition. Football, soccer. By far the most popular sport in Rwanda is football. From the bustling neighborhoods of Kigali to the remote hills of Nyamagabe, you will find boys, and increasingly girls, kicking around a ball, sometimes an actual leather football, other times a bundle of banana fibers tied with string, serving as an improvised ball. The national football team, nicknamed Amavubi, the Wasps, has had its moments on the international stage. In 2004, Rwanda astonished observers by qualifying for the African Cup of Nations for the first time, a milestone achievement for such a small nation. While the team did not advance past the group stage, simply making it to the continent's biggest tournament ignited pride back home. Crowds gathered around radios and TVs, cheering on Amavubi in their yellow kits as they held giants like Tunisia to a draw. Domestically, Rwanda's football league is energetic, with clubs like APRFC, run by the army, and Rayon Sports, Kigali's fan favorite, drawing devoted followings. Match days can bring lively rivalry, especially during the derby between APR and Rayon, where stadiums fill with drumming, singing supporters. In keeping with Rwanda's emphasis on order, the government has renovated regional stadiums and implemented security and anti-hooligan measures, making local matches family-friendly events. The sport has also been a conduit for reconciliation. Programs like Football for Peace have organized mixed community teams and tournaments in villages to help youth from different backgrounds bond on the pitch rather than see each other as different. Interestingly, Rwanda leverages football for diplomacy and branding. The Visit Rwanda logo adorns the sleeves of Arsenal Football Club in the English Premier League, thanks to a sponsorship deal aimed at boosting tourism visibility. This choice sparked debate abroad about an aid recipient country spending on football sponsorship. But many Rwandans view it as a savvy investment. After all, millions see the message each week, associating Rwanda with a positive, forward-looking image. And indeed, the partnership has coincided with a growing trickle of tourists wearing Arsenal jerseys landing at Kigali's airport, curious about the country that loves the Gunners. Basketball. In recent years, Rwanda has undergone a bit of a basketball renaissance. The construction of the ultra-modern BK Arena in Kigali, a gleaming indoor stadium that seats 10,000, signaled a commitment to hoops. Rwanda hosted the inaugural season finale of the Basketball Africa League, BAL, in 2021, a new continental competition partly backed by the NBA, bringing teams from across Africa and NBA legends to Kigali. The national basketball team, known as the Patriots on the club level and simply Team Rwanda for national duty, is steadily improving, often finishing respectably in African tournaments. But perhaps more importantly, basketball's rise has given urban youth, both boys and girls, new heroes and aspirations. Local leagues and youth clinics have expanded. It's not uncommon now to see teenagers shooting hoops on newly built outdoor courts at schools or community centers, sometimes coached by American Peace Corps volunteers or alumni of the NBA's Giants of Africa program, founded by Toronto Raptors GM Masai Ujiri, who has roots in East Africa. Rwanda's embrace of basketball culminated in being chosen to co-host the 2023 Afro-Basket tournament, and even talk of bidding for an African Olympic qualifying tournament down the line. Cycling. If football is king and basketball is the rising prince, then cycling is the unexpected popular princess of Rwandan sports. Rwanda's hilly terrain and scenic roads have birthed a cycling culture that has captivated the nation. The annual Tour du Rwanda, once a local amateur race, has grown into one of Africa's premier cycling events on the international calendar, attracting professional teams from Europe and beyond. During Tour Week, Rwandans line the countryside roads by the thousands, children cheering and chasing after the brightly clad cyclists who sweat up the steep inclines. Rwandan riders have become household names. People cheer for figures like Joseph Araruya or Valence Ndayisenga, who have won the Tour du Rwanda multiple times, and they still fondly recall the story of Adrian Niyonshuti, who overcame the trauma of losing family in 1994 to become Rwanda's first Olympic cyclist, competing in the 2012 London Games. Perhaps the pinnacle of Rwanda's cycling dream is on the horizon. In 2025, Kigali is set to host the UCI Road World Championships, the first time this prestigious event will ever take place in Africa. It's hard to overstate the excitement for this. The country sees it as an opportunity to showcase Rwanda's stunning landscape and organizational prowess, and as an inspiration for African cyclists everywhere. There is even a plan to build a state-of-the-art cycling center and velodrome outside Kigali in honor of this event, ensuring a legacy for future generations. Athletics and other sports. Rwanda's high altitude and rolling terrain make it a favorable training ground for distance runners, and indeed, the country has produced some notable athletes in track and field. While Kenya and Ethiopia often overshadow Rwanda in international athletics, Rwandan marathoners and Paralympians have brought home accolades. For instance, Matthias Ntawulikura reached multiple Olympic finals in the 10,000 meters in the 1990s, and more recently, Hermas Muvunyi won gold in the 400 meters at the Paralympic World Championships, showcasing Rwanda's inclusive sporting talent. Each year, Kigali holds a peace marathon drawing participants from around the world, symbolizing how far the nation has come. Volleyball, particularly in its seated volleyball Paralympic form, is another sport where Rwanda shines. The national women's sitting volleyball team, composed of survivors of polio and conflict injuries, has represented Africa in multiple Paralympic Games, a source of pride and a powerful narrative of resilience. In conventional volleyball, Rwanda's men's team has climbed into the top ranks within Africa, even hosting and winning regional championships. The energy at indoor volleyball matches in Kigali is infectious, with drummers and dance troupes performing between sets. Traditional sports and games are also cherished at the community level. In rural areas, boys still practice gusimbuka urukiramende, high jumping over a cord, a graceful pre-colonial sport that was historically part of young men's initiation, not unlike the famed jumping dances of the Maasai. Wrestling and tug-of-war sometimes feature in local festivals, and every now and then, older folks organize intonga, stick-fighting demonstrations, more to keep culture alive than as serious competition. Sports for unity and development. The Rwandan government and NGOs leverage sports as tools for development and healing. Programs like Right to Play and Surf Rwanda use games to teach life skills to children, promote gender equality, and provide trauma counseling through play. There are moving stories, a football league for orphans of the genocide, which helped teens find friendship and purpose, a cycling club that pairs Hutu and Tutsi youths on tandem bikes literally pedaling in sync, basketball camps that bring together kids from across East Africa, forging new Pan-African friendships in Kigali. One cannot ignore the symbolic weight of Rwanda's sports journey. In 1994, the country's stadiums were sites of massacre or makeshift refugee camps. Today, those same stadiums echo with cheers, not screams. For example, Amahoro Stadium in Kigali, whose name means peace, sheltered thousands of people during the genocide. Now it hosts Peace Cup finals and commemorative concerts. Each sporting triumph, even a simple win in a regional match, is celebrated as validation that Rwanda is back on its feet, competing with the world, united under one flag. In daily life beyond organized sports, Rwandans have embraced recreational fitness in general. Every car-free day in Kigali, you'll see throngs of residents cycling, jogging, or doing group aerobics in the streets. A scene that would have been unimaginable years ago. Gyms and yoga classes are popping up in the city, and hiking clubs organize treks in the country's lush mountains. The government, ever health conscious, encourages this fitness culture as a way to reduce diseases and increase productivity. In sum, sports in Rwanda are more than just games. They are a mirror of the nation's progress and a glue for its social fabric. Whether it's chanting in unison for the national football team, ringing cowbells for cyclists struggling up a hill, or high-fiving a neighbor during a community fun run, Rwandans find in sports a collective joy and a forward drive. As we leave the stadium atmosphere behind, we turn to two fundamental pillars that have enabled Rwanda's societal transformation: education and healthcare, where the country has invested vigorously to build a better future. Few countries have had to rebuild their human capital as Rwanda did after 1994. In the genocide's wake, schools and hospitals lay in ruins, and a generation of professionals, teachers, doctors, nurses, had been decimated or fled. In the years since, Rwanda has poured its heart and resources into education and healthcare, recognizing these as the twin foundations for a sustainable future. The results have been nothing short of transformative. Today, Rwanda boasts one of the highest school enrollment rates in Africa and has achieved health outcomes that are the envy of nations many times wealthier. Education. A new generation learns. In a village classroom perched on a hill, children in bright blue uniforms recite multiplication tables and eagerly wave their hands to answer questions. Scenes like this are now common across Rwanda. The government made universal primary education a priority early on, and by the mid-2000s, over 95% of primary school-aged children were enrolled in school, with parity between boys and girls. Primary education was made free, and communities rallied to build schools through initiatives like École pour tous, and later the 9-year basic education program that extended free schooling to the junior secondary level. Citizens participated in mass action. During Umuganda, villagers molded bricks and put up new classrooms at astonishing rates. In one campaign, thousands of classrooms were constructed nationwide within a year to eliminate overcrowding. In secondary education, Rwanda has made huge strides as well. The 12 years basic education policy now aims to ensure every child gets at least through upper secondary. While not yet fully achieved, the enrollment numbers climb each year. And more importantly, the quality of education is a constant focus. Recognizing that a skilled workforce is crucial for development, Rwanda switched the language of instruction from French to English in 2008 to better integrate with regional and global markets. This was a bold move that posed challenges. Many older teachers had to rapidly learn English themselves. But with intensive training programs, the transition took root. Today, a Rwandan teenager might study physics, history, and IT entirely in English, then go home and speak Kinyarwanda with family, and possibly some French with an elderly grandparent. It's a multilingual, adaptive generation. The curriculum has been overhauled to emphasize critical thinking, entrepreneurship, and STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. In many schools, you'll find ICT labs powered by solar panels and students learning basic coding or graphic design. Through partnerships with NGOs and companies, thousands of children received laptops under the One Laptop Per Child initiative, painting an indelible image of youngsters in remote areas tapping away on green and white EXO computers beneath banana trees. Extracurriculars are also growing, from debate clubs that nurture a culture of civic dialogue to robotics teams that have started representing Rwanda in international competitions. Higher education has not been left behind. The historic National University of Rwanda in Huye, once the pride of the post-independence era, has been merged into the umbrella University of Rwanda with campuses across the country, offering specialized training in medicine, agriculture, technology, and more. New private and international institutions have set up in Kigali, including the Carnegie Mellon University Africa campus, which grants world-class engineering and IT degrees on Rwandan soil. There's also the African Leadership University and other colleges drawing students from across the continent. Scholarships are provided for top students to study abroad, but increasingly, many are finding they can get quality education at home. The government's Vision 2050 explicitly aims for a knowledge-driven economy, and it's evident in the ambition of students. One might meet a young woman from a rural district who learned English at lightning speed, excelled in school, and is now studying to be an aeronautical engineer, dreaming to work for Rwandair or NASA. Challenges remain in education. Large class sizes in some rural schools, a need for more qualified science and math teachers, and disparities in resources between urban and rural areas. But the overall trajectory is extremely positive. Literacy rates climb to around 76%. Virtually all youth are literate, and a culture of education for all is firmly ingrained. Parents, even those who themselves had little schooling, now insist their children attend and complete school, a monumental shift from previous generations. Healthcare, healing a nation. The transformation in Rwanda's health sector is often cited as a model in Africa. Walk into a health center in a Rwandan sector today, and you might see a modern triage area, with nurses in crisp white uniforms checking patients' vital signs, mothers waiting for prenatal consultations, and children lining up for immunizations. A far cry from the dilapidated clinics, or absence of any clinic, in the 1990s. One of Rwanda's most lauded innovations is its system of community-based health insurance, known as Mutuelle de Santé. For a small fee, scaled by income, Rwandans enroll annually and gain access to care across the country. The impact of Mutuelle has been profound. Healthcare utilization skyrocketed as even the poorest could afford treatment. And today, over 90% of the population has health insurance coverage. This mass access enabled Rwanda to carry out public health campaigns with wide reach. Consider maternal and child health. Rwanda's progress has been dubbed a miracle. In 2000, more than 1 in 10 Rwandan children did not live to see their 5th birthday, and maternal mortality was tragically common. 2 decades later, under 5 mortality has plummeted by over 70%, and maternal deaths have fallen by a similar margin. Thousands of lives are saved each year by simple interventions. Widespread vaccination. Rwanda routinely achieves above 95% coverage for basic childhood vaccines. Distribution of millions of insecticide-treated bed nets to combat malaria, and the establishment of emergency ambulance and referral networks for pregnant women with complications. In fact, Rwanda became the first African country to introduce the HPV vaccine nationwide to prevent cervical cancer, reaching over 90% of eligible girls in its first year. An astonishing feat of logistics and advocacy, accomplished by rallying teachers, community health workers, and even the First Lady leading awareness campaigns. A cornerstone of Rwanda's health success is its army of community health workers, CHWs, about 45,000 volunteers, at least 3 in every village, who serve as the frontline eyes and ears of the health system. These CHWs are trained to treat common ailments, like diarrhea, malaria, minor injuries, monitor malnutrition in children, accompany expectant mothers to clinics, and follow up on patients with chronic illnesses to ensure they take their medications. Equipped with bicycles or sometimes smartphones provided by the Ministry of Health, CHWs have dramatically increased early intervention in communities. The approach is both high-tech and high-touch. A health worker might use an app to send SMS reports of a patient's symptoms to doctors in the district hospital, then pay a personal home visit to check that patient's progress. Rwanda hasn't shied away from cutting-edge solutions either. In 2016, it grabbed global attention by launching drones to deliver blood and medical supplies to remote clinics. These small red and white unmanned planes, operated by the company Zipline in partnership with the government, buzz above the green hills and drop parachute packages of blood units, often saving the lives of women with postpartum hemorrhage or accident victims who in the past might have died awaiting a transfusion. Now, what used to be a 2-hour drive on muddy roads for a blood delivery can take 15 minutes by drone. Rwanda was the first to do this nationally, and it has since expanded to delivering vaccines and medications, a prime example of leapfrogging infrastructure gaps with innovation. Hospitals, too, have been upgraded. Every district has at least one district hospital with doctors, and the main referral hospitals in Kigali, King Faisal Hospital, Kigali University Teaching Hospital, KUK, have improved capabilities including CT scans, dialysis units, and more specialist care. The nation even built a modern cancer center in Butaro, a rural area, in collaboration with international partners. Set on a scenic hilltop, the Butaro Hospital has become known for providing high-quality cancer treatment, chemotherapy, surgical care, to patients who previously would have had no hope or would have had to travel abroad. Telemedicine links and physician training partnerships bring expertise from abroad to Rwandan patients in real time. HIV/AIDS, which could have spiraled after the social disruption of the genocide, was aggressively tackled. Rwanda rolled out antiretroviral therapy early and widely. Today, over 90% of those living with HIV are on treatment, and the virus is largely under control, with one of the lowest HIV prevalence rates in the region, around 3%. Equally, family planning adoptions soared with government campaigns, contributing to smaller, healthier families. Even during the COVID-19 pandemic, Rwanda won praise. It enforced some of Africa's strictest lockdowns and health measures, used robots in COVID treatment centers to minimize human exposure, and achieved one of the highest vaccination rates on the continent by the end of 2021, over 60% fully vaccinated when many African countries were below 10%. Images of masked Rwandan health workers doing temperature checks at bus stations and drones broadcasting social distancing messages in Kinyarwanda over Kigali underscored the country's diligent response. The healthcare improvements resonate deeply in daily life. A mother in a village will recount how in her childhood they feared measles and women gave birth at home. But now her children are vaccinated and she delivered her last baby safely in a health center with a nurse by her side. Life expectancy has climbed from around 30 years after the genocide, an extreme low due to the catastrophe, to about 69 years today, a statistic that represents millions of individual stories of life saved and prolonged. Both education and health sectors benefit from Rwanda's ethos of community engagement and accountability. Teachers and health workers are held to performance standards through the Imihigo contracts. They publicly pledge targets like student pass rates or vaccination coverage, and communities evaluate their success. Every year, the president presides over an Umushikirano, national dialogue, where citizens can directly ask leaders about issues. Often, education quality and healthcare access are hot topics, indicating how invested ordinary Rwandans are in these services. The improvements in education and health have unlocked the potential of Rwanda's greatest resource, its people. Healthier, better educated citizens are now driving forward local innovations and enterprises. In the final section, let's look at how grassroots innovation and the entrepreneurial spirit are blooming in Rwanda, as communities devise creative solutions to their own challenges and aspirations. Rwanda's renaissance is not only the product of top-down policies, it is equally fueled by the creativity and determination bubbling up from its communities. Across the country, ordinary people have become innovators, adapting traditions, embracing new technologies, and solving local problems with limited resources. This spirit of grassroots innovation is visible everywhere. In farmers' cooperatives devising new irrigation techniques, in village savings groups empowering women to start businesses, in tech meetups in Kigali, where young coders design apps for local needs, and in everyday ingenuity that turns adversity into opportunity. One of the most striking examples is how Rwanda revived and repurposed its own cultural practices to address modern challenges. Take Ubudehe, a traditional practice of mutual help. Historically, communities would come together to till a neighbor's field or build a house for a family in need. The government has institutionalized Ubudehe as a form of social safety net and participatory development. Villagers themselves identify the poorest among them and decide on community projects to uplift everyone, whether it's terracing a hillside to improve agriculture or pooling funds to buy a cow for a struggling household. This approach not only ensures aid reaches those who truly need it, because the community knows best who is struggling, but it also reinforces solidarity. In countless villages, you'll hear stories like, "Our Ubudehe group built a rainwater tank that we all share. Now even the poorest have water in the dry season." Similarly, Imihigo, the ancient tradition where warriors would vow specific feats before their king, has been transformed into a modern governance tool where local mayors and ministries publicly promise targets, build X kilometers of road, connect Y households to electricity, raise exam scores by Z%, and are held accountable at year's end. While this is a national program, it trickles down to ordinary citizens. District performance contracts are often achieved by mobilizing thousands of small contributions, each citizen doing their part, knowing that their community's pride is at stake. It has spurred a healthy competition at grassroots. One sector strives to outdo the neighboring sector in tree planting or in health insurance enrollment rates, for instance. Rwandan farmers, who form the majority of the population, have been at the forefront of innovation because for them, innovation often means survival. In Eastern Province, where droughts used to wreak havoc, communities have built small dams and pioneered solar-powered irrigation pumps to keep the fields green, even in the dry season. In mountainous Western Province, farmers terraced steep slopes with engineering precision passed down over generations, doubling arable land and preventing soil erosion. Agricultural cooperatives are ubiquitous. A group of coffee growers, for example, will band together to purchase a shared washing station so they can process beans locally and capture more value. One famous cooperative in Maraba became internationally known for producing specialty coffee that baristas in Seattle and London rave about. A direct result of grassroots organization, as local growers united, improved quality control, and directly connected with global buyers. Likewise, women in many rural areas have formed handicraft cooperatives, weaving the iconic Agaseke baskets or crafting Imigongo paintings, turning cultural crafts into exportable, income-generating art. The peace basket, once a symbol of reconciliation woven by Hutu and Tutsi women working side by side, is now a sought-after item at craft markets and has even been presented to visiting heads of state. Technology at the grassroots level is also taking off. In a country with excellent cell network coverage, over 90% of Rwandans live under 4G LTE signal. Even farmers and villagers are leveraging mobile phones in clever ways. Mobile banking and mobile money services like Momo have transformed commerce. A farmer can receive payments for her banana crop via phone, save money securely without a bank account, and pay for fertilizer or school fees all through simple SMS menus. This has particularly empowered women and youth, who traditionally had less access to formal banking. Startups have sprung up to cater to local needs. One app sends SMS weather forecasts and farming tips in Kinyarwanda to subscribers in rural areas. Another platform, developed by college students, connects smallholder farmers to buyers in town, cutting out exploitative middlemen. Young techies from Kigali's Innovation City incubators often travel to villages to conduct user research, ensuring their software solutions are grounded in everyday reality. In the health realm, community-driven innovation thrives as well. Beyond the well-known drone deliveries, there are subtler innovations. For instance, some remote communities revive the practice of ikibina, rotating work groups, in the context of health. A group of volunteers collectively tend to each member's kitchen garden in rotation, ensuring everyone grows nutritious foods like orange sweet potatoes and moringa, improving community nutrition and sharing agricultural tips as they go. Local tailors, seeing a need during the COVID-19 pandemic, organized to sew thousands of reusable face masks from kiting fabric for free distribution, marrying a public health necessity with cultural aesthetics. Education, too, has grassroots heroes. In areas without enough teachers, you might find older students forming study circles to teach the younger ones in evenings, a spontaneous mentorship filling gaps in the system. Stories abound of individuals like a genocide survivor who started a makeshift school under a tree for orphans in 1995, which over time, with community support and some NGO help, evolved into a proper primary school producing top exam performers. In many villages, parents through parent-teacher associations have raised money to buy solar lamps so children can study at night, or to collectively hire an extra community teacher for subjects like English or computer literacy. Entrepreneurial innovation at the micro level is visible on every street. The motto, Agaseke, dignity, char, self-reliance, that the government promotes resonates with people's desire to create their own opportunities. In Kigali, young women run beauty clubs, informal salons set up on a sidewalk with a mirror hung on a tree, offering hair braiding and nail painting services to passers-by. A low-capital business that nonetheless provides them income and independence. In secondary cities, inventive mechanics repurpose motorcycle engines to build corn grinders or water pumps for their communities. A group of university students, seeing the toll of plastic waste, despite the plastic bag ban, bottles and other plastics remain a challenge, innovated a process to melt and press plastic trash into durable paving bricks, now used in a pilot to pave walkways in a public park. They got the idea from seeing similar projects online, adapted it with local materials, and through a government youth innovation fund, scaled it up. Grassroots innovation is also nurtured by Rwanda's policy of encouraging public consultation and local problem solving. Each year, for example, districts hold innovation days, where citizens present projects or inventions that improve life in their community. The best ideas, whether it's a new beehive design that doubles honey production or a community-built hydro microturbine lighting up a few households, receive recognition and sometimes seed funding to expand. The effect of this is psychological as much as material. It tells people that solutions don't always have to come from the top or from abroad. They can arise from within the community and be just as effective. Perhaps the most powerful grassroots innovation in Rwanda is the intangible one, the innovation of mindset. Over the past quarter century, Rwandans have, collectively, innovated a way of thinking that prioritizes unity, resilience, and forward momentum. They took concepts like forgiveness and made them pragmatic through Gacaca courts, took fear and transformed it into determination to never slide back into chaos. Every local initiative, no matter how small, like a youth club cleaning a village water source or a mother's group teaching each other how to sew school uniforms, contributes to this national tapestry of resilience. In Kigali, there's a popular slogan painted on a mural. The best sanctuary is in the minds of the people. It underscores that the ultimate innovation Rwanda achieved was to rebuild trust among its people, brick by brick, idea by idea. As we conclude our deep dive into Rwanda, we've seen its geography, its turbulent history, its economic strides, political nuances, cultural vibrancy, and the everyday heroism of its citizens. It is a nation that has remade itself with an unyielding hope and hard work. A place where, each morning, the sun rises over those 1,000 hills and finds a people busy turning past sorrows into future possibilities. Rwanda, once defined by tragedy, now stands as a testament to the human capacity for renewal, a country explaining to the world not only how it survived, but how it intends to thrive.